Chapter 2903 Fame shakes God's domain. Dark Knight Empire, Winter Night Border Fortress. With the opening of the Second War of Worlds, the Outer Worlds NPC army had appeared at the borders of many of the Eastern continent's kingdoms and empires. Although no full-blown battles had taken place yet, many skirmishes had occurred already. Guild leader Lu, I'm afraid things will be troublesome this time. The Outer Worlds NPC army is much larger than we anticipated. Although the Outer World player army we have to deal with is much smaller than those at the other empires, we'll still face a tough fight, even if we work together with the Empire's army. Hidden Cloud, the fifth-floor master of the Super Guild 9 Heavens Pavilion, said with a frown as he read the latest report on the Outer Worlds NPC army. If we can't even hold our side, there's no need to mention pushing back the Outer Worlds NPC army and taking Zero Wing's 2 cities in the Orc Empire. During the First War of Worlds, both sides had gathered all their forces at one location for a decisive battle. However, the Outer Worlds NPC army had acted differently this time, splitting into several dozen smaller groups and invading multiple kingdoms and empires simultaneously. Many of their targets were even empires holding strategic locations on the eastern continent. The forces the Outer World NPCs had invested into this second war were on a whole other level compared to before. Thus, many of the eastern continent's kingdoms and empires had no choice but to focus on defending their own territory. In this situation, even if the Twin Towers Kingdom and Star Moon Kingdom fell, Starlink and its several allied superpowers wouldn't be able to get the eastern continent's various kingdoms and empires to retake Star Moon Kingdom. And if Star Moon Kingdom remained in the Outer World NPC's hands, taking Zero Wing's lost Ancient Rock City and Silverwing City would also be impossible. You can rest assured, Brother Cloud. According to the information I got, the several kingdoms neighboring the Dark Knight Empire that aren't under attack are already mobilizing their troops to the Dark Knight Empire, Lu Tiandi said, assuaging Hidden Cloud's worries. Once these kingdoms' armies arrive, combined with the players we have here, defending against the Outer Worlds NPC army shouldn't be difficult. As for Zero Wing's 2 guild cities, it doesn't matter even if we can't acquire them fully as planned. Once the Twin Towers Kingdom falls, Zero Wing will have to beg us to help defend Star Moon Kingdom to keep those 2 cities. At that time, let alone obtaining shares to those 2 guild cities, we might even be able to acquire shares for Zero Wing City. After hearing Lu Tiandi's words, Hidden Cloud nodded in agreement. Although there was a slight change to their plans, the overall situation remained in their favor. The Dark Knight Empire had an advantage in players over the Outer World army, so it wouldn't be difficult to repel the enemy. After all, players did not fear death, unlike NPCs. Moreover, the Dark Knight Empire had opened its treasury to players this time. Players fighting for the Empire would receive contribution points if they managed to kill the Outer World NPCs, and these points could be exchanged for weapons and equipment. Hence, the Empire's players no longer had to worry about running out of weapons and equipment. The only uncertainty left in their plan now was Zero Wing's decision. Zero Wing could either choose to monopolize Zero Wing City's benefits and abandon Star Moon Kingdom and its 2 guild cities in the Orc Empire, or give away a portion of Zero Wing City's benefits to secure Star Moon Kingdom and those 2 guild cities. However, just when Lu Tiandi, Hidden Cloud, and the other superpowers executives present were about to continue discussing how to proceed in the current situation, a commotion suddenly erupted among the Winter Night Fortress's players. Moreover, it grew louder and louder as more time passed. This situation confused Lu Tiandi and the others, who were holding a meeting atop the fortress's wall. Guild leader. Something big happened. Suddenly, a middle-aged man approached the group of executives hurriedly and arrived before Lu Tiandi. This person was none other than Ikue, Lu Tiandi's butler. At this time, Ikue had an anxious expression, his usual composure nowhere in sight. What happened? Why are you in such a hurry? Lu Tiandi asked in dissatisfaction as he looked at Ikue. As his butler and secretary in the guild, Ikue could be considered a representative of Starlink. Ikue was simply embarrassing Starlink by displaying such uncouth behavior in front of the various superpowers executives. Ikue hesitated to speak as he looked at the various representatives present. From Ikue's hesitancy, Lu Tiandi understood that his butler had something very important to tell him. He then said, "If you can't say it, send the information to me." Immediately, Yi forwarded the relevant information to Lu Tiandi. Although this situation piqued the various executives' curiosity, none of them said anything about Lu Tiandi and Yi exchange. After all, every guild had its secrets. However, roughly 10 seconds after Lu Tiandi began reading the information Yi provided, his expression changed drastically. He even failed to control himself and shouted his thoughts. Impossible! Lu Tiandi's loss of composure surprised the various superpowers executives. Lu Tiandi had criticized Yi for the latter's loss of composure just a moment ago, yet he was now behaving even worse than Yi. Just when the various superpowers executives were about to ask Lu Tiandi what information he had received, they suddenly received a message from their respective subordinates. The content of the message was simple, and it even came with a battle video attached. When the various executives played the battle video, what first entered their eyes was a man swinging a sword at one of the Outer Worlds player armies. However, the next moment, both a gigantic 9-headed snake and over 1/4 of the player army vanished along with a significant portion of the forest. Afterward, the remaining Outer World players scattered and fled the area. As for the man, he returned to the flying ship behind him and departed the area as well. A crimson dragon flying ship? Is he Black Flame? Questions and shock flooded the heads of the various superpowers executives. All of them were Tier 4 players, so despite the battle video's brevity, their eyes still managed to take note of every little detail in it. Although they couldn't see the 9-headed snake's information, based on the spatial fluctuations surrounding it, the monster was undoubtedly at the Tier 5 legendary rank. They also counted at least 4,000 Tier 4 players in the Outer Worlds player army, far more than what any single empire on the eastern continent had faced so far. Yet, Shifeng had not only killed the Tier 5 legendary monster with one attack, but also defeated the army of millions. After several minutes of silence, the various superpowers executives snapped out of their daze one after another. However, their earlier complacency was nowhere to be seen, replaced by solemn expressions. Guild Leader Lu, I still have something to do, so I'll be taking my leave first. Guild Leader Lu, my superior suddenly called me back for a meeting, so excuse me. Guild Leader Lu. The next moment, the various superpowers executives gave all sorts of excuses and left the fortress in quick succession. Even Hidden Cloud, Lu Tiandi's staunch supporter, suddenly said he felt ill and logged out of the game to rest. In no time at all, only Lu Tiandi and Yi remained on the fortress's wall. Yi-Kuei's complexion turned livid as he watched the various superpowers executives leave. He then asked Lu Tiandi, "What should we do now, young master?" The strength Shifeng displayed had already thoroughly exceeded their imagination. After the battle in the Shadow Forest, Yi-Kuei could already foresee the Outer Worlds players abandoning their attack on the Twin Towers Kingdom and Star Moon Kingdom. Since the Outer Worlds NPC army had split into several dozen groups, mainly targeting the various empires, Zero Wing should have no problem defending the Twin Towers Kingdom. Not to mention, Shifeng could solo Tier 5 legendary monsters. So long as he didn't foolishly rush into the NPC army's base camp, killing the Outer Worlds NPCs would be a cakewalk for him. In contrast to Zero Wing's situation, Starlink's situation was absolutely abysmal. If they went by the reactions of the various superpowers executives, these superpowers intended to abandon Starlink. We haven't lost yet, Lu Tiandi said as he sent a cold glare at Yi-Kuei. Black Flame is the core of everything. So long as we deal with Black Flame, everything else will be simple. But Black Flame's strength is extraordinary. The Grandmasters the various corporations sent last time are still lying in the hospital, Yi-Kuei said. Yi-Kuei had received a fright when he heard this news back then. That was a force of 14 half-step Grandmaster and Grandmaster level experts. Yet these experts had actually lost. Moreover, according to them, Shifeng had defeated them all by himself. The strength he wielded was simply unbelievable. Moreover, the Grandmasters in the group even judged that Shifeng was most likely a mental strength master already. A mental strength master was an existence Starlink couldn't afford to offend, no matter what. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Who at best, he has just become a mental strength master. He is still far from a match for my teacher, Lu Tiandi said coldly. I don't know what happened, but my teacher suddenly became interested in God's domain recently, and now wants to gain control over a powerful force in God's domain. He even told me to figure out a way to do so. My original plan was to annex Zero Wing for myself, but seeing as that's not possible now, I can give it to my teacher instead. With Zero Wing's current influence and resources, there's no way my teacher won't be interested. Moreover, Black Flame even got my senior brother kicked out of the upper zone. Given my teacher's personality, he will deal with Black Flame, even if Black Flame is now a mental strength master. Lu Tiandi no longer held any hope of annexing Zero Wing's resources. Nevertheless, he couldn't let Shifeng off the hook so easily. After Lu Tiandi finished speaking, he assigned some tasks to Ikue and logged off to contact his teacher. In the meantime, the various powers of God's domain had also received news of Shifeng defeating one of the Outer Worlds player armies. The superpowers were shaken for a time, and their fear of Zero Wing skyrocketed. Some superpowers even began planning to convey good intentions to Zero Wing. However, Shifeng wasn't present in God's domain to receive any of these good intentions, as he had promptly logged out of the game after returning to Sky Spring City. This was because today was the day he would receive his large mansion. Chapter 2904 Changing Times Yuantian City's Upper Zone. Base Layer Upper Class Mansion District. Brother Shi, I really have to congratulate you this time. This large mansion is the last one available in the base layer. You probably can't get another one in Yuantian City's upper zone even if you want to in the future, Han Feng said when he saw Shifeng registering himself as the owner of the mansion in front of him. Looking at the three-story mansion, which occupied an area as large as half a football field, he couldn't repress his envy as he said, "You're only one of 3 people to own a large mansion as an individual in Yuantian City's upper zone." The base layer's 10 large mansions didn't just have the best position and environment. They also served as a status symbol. The only reason Han Feng got to stay in a large mansion himself was his status as the 5 states corporation's heir. The other members of his family, even those with excellent performance, could stay in the large mansion for only a short period. In comparison, Shifeng had purchased a large mansion all by himself. Moreover, he wouldn't have any people disturbing his peace. The heirs and heads of the base layer's various corporations would be green with envy once they heard about this. The last one. Shifeng was a little surprised. Weren't there 2 left before? Did someone buy the other one during this time? They concluded the purchase yesterday, Han Feng said, nodding. Sighing ruefully, he continued, moreover, you might very well know the person who bought it. I know them. Shifeng grew even more surprised. There were only 10 large mansions in the base layer. Even a powerful organization like the Boulder Corporation didn't have the ability to purchase one. He found it truly hard to imagine that any of his acquaintances did. You might not know her in real life, but you've probably heard of her in God's domain, Han Feng said, chuckling. Does the name Endless Scars or Weiyang Qianhen ring any bells? The Midnight Tea Party she belongs to is currently the target of recruitment of even the 5 great super guilds. Rumors say that she has already developed her mana body to the 120% completion rate, and she can probably get promoted to Tier 5 at any time. It's her. Shifeng was startled. He had a general idea of Endless Scars' identity. He was sure that she was the princess of a major corporation and that she might live in the upper zone. However, he never thought that Endless Scars would hold such great strength in the upper zone that she could afford a large mansion. It seems you do know her. Looking at Shifeng's surprised expression, Han Feng smiled and said, she's quite something. You can even say that she's astounding. She managed to buy that mansion this time not because of her family but because her senior brother gifted it to her. Gifted? Shifeng was flabbergasted. He had spent a lot of 7 luminaries crystals to purchase a large mansion, and he didn't know how much time he would need to collect so many crystals again. That's right. It's because she has incredible talent. A big shot in the middle layer recently took her in as his student. I heard that this big shot even paid a high price to borrow a middle layer reserve slot for her to help her break through to mental strength master, Han Feng said, a hint of envy appearing in his eyes. I have to admit that her talent is truly astonishing. She's been labeled the best talent Yuantian City's upper zone has seen in the past 100 years. Once she reaches the middle layer, she'll probably take only a few months to become a mental strength master. And with her talent, beauty, and a middle layer big shot supporting her, she naturally became the target of pursuit of many of the upper zone's youths. One of them is Qin Bai, her senior brother. Qin Bai is also an extraordinary talent. He successfully broke through and became a mental strength master 2 years ago, the youngest mental strength master in Yuantian City's upper zone in the past 20 years. Because Wei Yongqianhen arrived at Yuantian City's upper zone only recently, Qin Bai bought a large mansion as a temporary residence for her to adapt to the lifestyle here. Having spoken up to this point, Han Yifeng, who was normally indifferent to his surroundings, betrayed some yearning for the woman named Wei Yongqianhen. After all, mental strength masters were incredibly rare, and a beautiful mental strength master was rarer. However, before Han Yifeng could fantasize for long, Shifeng interrupted him, asking, "Young Master Han, do I need to go through any procedures to let other people live in this mansion long-term?" Feng Shihan had transferred 10 upper zone reserve slots, and he had already assigned them to Fire Dance and the others. The ordinary housing unit couldn't accommodate them all. Meanwhile, one would enjoy vastly different treatment depending on whether one had housing or not. A housing status didn't just signify that one had lodging. It also determined the exercise equipment and food one could gain access to, among other things. Those without housing could only enjoy the most common training facilities and food. If one wished to eat better food or rent the upper zone's high-tech training facilities, one needed to have housing status. "There are some," Han Yifeng said, nodding. "All you need to do is register their identities at the Green God Tower. If you're not familiar with anyone there, you can come with me. It so happens that I also need to register someone to my mansion." At this point, Han Yifeng no longer dared underestimate Shifeng. In fact, he had even begun placing great importance on Shifeng. Shifeng's defeating multiple Honglian grandmasters all by himself aside, just the position and resources Zero Wing currently held in God's domain already made the guild worthy of befriending for the upper zone's various organizations. After all, 7 luminaries crystals couldn't be acquired easily in God's domain. "I'll have to trouble you then, young Master Han," Shifeng said. Although Shifeng understood Han Yifeng's motives, he didn't reject the other party's goodwill. His partnership with Han Yifeng might be a long-term one, as he was severely lacking in resources and trade points. Meanwhile, the Five States Corporation possessed great influence in Yuantian City's upper zone. There should be a lot of things they could partner on in the future. Following this, Han Yifeng gave Shifeng a rundown on the basics of the large mansion. Then the two made their way to the Green God Tower. The Green God Tower's lobby was as crowded as ever. Members of corporations and internal members of the Green God Company were lined up, waiting to exchange for various potions. These people easily numbered over 1,000, and more were still joining the line. The situation at the housing registration counter wasn't the slightest bit inferior, either. When Shifeng and Han Yifeng entered the exchange center, a young and beautiful girl wearing a short-sleeved t-shirt and denim shorts noticed them. She immediately strode over with her long legs and approached them in a sprightly manner. Upon seeing the approaching girl, Han Yifeng turned to Shifeng and said, "This is my younger cousin, Han Rongrong. The family recently decided to have her live in the mansion because of her talent." When Shifeng saw the lively girl in front of him, he was somewhat surprised. Firstly, it was because of Han Rongrong's talent. From what he could tell, the girl was only around 16 or 17 years old, yet she had already reached the half-step Honglian Grandmaster standard. Secondly, it was because Han Rongrong's appearance resembled the famous Chaos Witch of his previous life. Although Chaos Witch was labeled a witch, she didn't actually play a magical class in God's domain. Instead, she was a guardian knight. Unlike Gentle Snow and Phoenix Rain, who had risen to fame early on in God's domain, Chaos Witch had joined God's domain 2 years after its launch. However, her rise was rapid, getting promoted to Tier 5 in less than 2 years. She had also become one of God's domain's 12 sacred guardian knights, and had been only half a step away from getting promoted to Tier 6. "Hello. My name is Han Rongrong. I heard a lot about you from my cousin. He says you're very strong. If there's an opportunity, we must have a spar with each other." Han Rongrong said as she looked at Shifeng with eyes sparkling with curiosity and fighting spirit. "Rongrong, stop messing around. Brother Shi can defeat even Honglian Grandmasters. Someone who isn't even a Honglian Grandmaster has no business challenging him," Han Yifeng said as he glared at Han Rongrong. After taking a deep breath, he continued, "Let's head to the VIP hall to get the residence registration done. However, Han Rongrong paid no heed to Han Yifeng's scolding. She even made a funny face at Han Yifeng. While following behind her cousin, she quietly observed Shifeng, the rumored extraordinary expert. The Green God Tower's VIP hall, located on the 22nd floor, was dedicated to receiving people of a certain status in the base layer. The base layer's average resident couldn't come here even if they wanted to. Only heirs of major corporations like Han Yifeng had the qualifications to do so. However, the so-called VIP hall wasn't anything special. It merely functioned as a specialized housing registration center. VIPs seeking to exchange for points and items still had to line up downstairs like everyone else. When Han Yifeng, Shifeng, and Han Rongrong entered the VIP hall, they found it nearly empty. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. However, upon seeing a group of 5 in the hall, Han Yifeng couldn't help tensing up. Of the 5, 4 were male and 1 was female. 3 of the 4 males were the top 3 rankers of the current contribution competition, while the last was a young man clad in white. As for the female, she was a beautiful young woman in a blue dress with an indifferent expression. Currently, the 4 males surrounded the woman. This woman was none other than Weiyang Qianhen, or Endless Scars, the person Han Yifeng mentioned earlier. When Shifeng's group entered the hall, Weiyang Qianhen shifted her gaze toward them. Before Shifeng and the others could react, she suddenly made her way toward them, causing Han Yifeng to widen his eyes in shock. Shifeng, right? Or should I call you Guild Leader Black Flame? Weiyang Qianhen said, smiling faintly as she took in Shifeng's dazed expression. You deceived me so badly before. Chapter 2905 High Grade Authority. When Weiyang Qianhen finished speaking, both the men tagging along with her and Han Yifeng turned to look at Shifeng in disbelief. Weiyang Qianhen's tone was gentle. Although her words sounded reproachful, they were actually intimate. Han Yifeng found this situation particularly unbelievable. He looked at Shifeng as if he was looking at a monster, his mouth nearly failing to close properly. Weiyang Qianhen currently enjoyed a lofty position in Yuantian City's upper zone, far out of even the 5 states' corporations' reach. Many youths in Yuantian City's upper zone could only dream of getting acquainted with Weiyang Qianhen, let alone having her strike up a conversation with them. Previously, when Han Yifeng spoke with Shifeng about Weiyang Qianhen, he thought Shifeng only knew of the woman's existence. After all, the Midnight Tea Party was extremely famous in God's domain, as one of the best adventurer teams in the game. Anyone with a reliable information network in God's domain would have heard of it. Han Yifeng never thought that the two of them were actually acquaintances and shared a good relationship. Meanwhile, in response to Weiyang Qianhen's questioning, Shifeng smiled bitterly and said, It seems I've made a fool of myself in front of Miss Weiyang. However, I was forced by circumstances to hide my true identity back then. You sure know how to act mature, Weiyang Qianhen said sourly. Previously, she had thought Shifeng was older than her, at least in his 30s, which explained how he came to possess such incredible strength. Afterward, she had constantly thought of surpassing Shifeng one day, going as far as to leave the Midnight Tea Party for a long period to train like crazy. After all, Shifeng had given her a lot of surprises during their initial meeting. She never thought a person could become so powerful. However, just when she thought she was catching up to Shifeng, she received a shocking piece of news. Black Flame's true identity was actually that of a young man who wasn't even 25. Moreover, he was a bona fide self-made expert who didn't possess the slightest bit of background or expert guidance. She had fallen into depression for quite some time after learning about this. Shifeng laughed blankly at Weiyang Qianhen's comment. In reality, it wasn't wrong to say that he was a man in his 30s. After all, he had been one when he reincarnated. It's been a while since we met, and it seems you've undergone an amazing transformation. You're now a celebrity in Yuantian City's upper zone. Oh me? That's where you are wrong. Weiyang Qianhen shook her head. She then pointed at the white-clad youth nearby and said, I'd better introduce you to my senior brother. When Weiyang Qianhen said the words senior brother, she deliberately emphasized the word senior, causing the white-clad youth to smile bitterly before walking over. And this is. When Shifeng looked at Qin Bai, he found the white-clad youth somewhat familiar. He felt as if he had met the other party somewhere before, yet he couldn't recall where. Hello, Guild Leader Black Flame. We meet again. Qin greeted with a smile. Again? Have we met before? Shifeng grew confused when he saw Qin greeting him like an old acquaintance. Of course you've met. He likes to act mature exactly like you, Weiyang Qianhen said as she glared at Qin gritting her teeth slightly. Smiling awkwardly, Qin said, "Let me introduce myself. You can call me by my real name Qin. You can also call me by my game ID Breeze Wine." Breeze Wine? You're Breeze Wine. Shifeng was startled when he heard Qin words. Breeze Wine was the Midnight Tea Party's commander, someone Shifeng had met and was relatively familiar with. However, the white-clad youth in front of him had a completely different look and bearing from Breeze Wine's wildness and boldness. While Shifeng was feeling surprised, Hanifeng, who stood beside him, was deeply shocked. Qin was not only a mental strength master, but also the youngest mental strength master in Yuantian City's upper zone. Who would have thought that a mental strength master was actually the commander of a 20-man adventurer team? Yet, God's Domain's various super first-rate guilds and super guilds had ignorantly used threats against the Midnight Tea Party to recruit the adventurer team. Those superpowers were simply tired of living. Don't mind it, Qin said awkwardly when he saw the surprise on Shifeng's face. I wasn't hiding it. Playing God's Domain is just one of my hobbies. After hearing Qin introduction, Shifeng finally understood how Weiyang Qianhen managed to catch the eye of a middle-layer big shot. It was very likely due to Qin introduction. Shifeng also understood why the Midnight Tea Party wasn't afraid of the various superpowers and could continue existing all this time. With Qin status, which superpower in God's Domain would dare offend him? Seeing Shifeng in deep thought, Qin took the initiative to say, "Guild leader Black Flame, you and your friends must be here to register your housing status as well, right? We are also here to deal with housing matters. Why don't we get it done together?" "I'll be in your care then," Shifeng said, accepting the offer. There were still a few people lined up, waiting to get their business done in the hall. If Qin was willing to help expedite the procedure, it was naturally good news for Shifeng. After all, the sooner he got gentle snow and aqua rose into the large mansion, the sooner he could alleviate the stress on their mind. Naturally, Hanifeng also didn't refuse the offer. He wanted nothing more than to establish a connection with Qin right now. Although the Five States Corporation had a solid foundation in the base layer, the influence the corporation held in the upper zone was still insignificant compared to Qin. If Hanifeng could get acquainted with Qin now, he would have an easier time when he entered the middle layer. After all, the middle layer wasn't an easy place to survive in. The competition there was even fiercer than in the base layer. Subsequently, the group had all its needs taken care of in less than 10 minutes. When the group arrived at the Green God Tower's entrance and was about to part ways, a commotion erupted from the street outside. The next moment, a maglev car suddenly descended from the sky and landed in front of the entrance, catching the attention of all the nearby pedestrians. Although the upper zone allowed residents to drive their own cars, that was limited to road use. Cars were prohibited from flying. The only ones allowed to do so were people with very high status in the upper zone. After the maglev car parked in front of the Green God Tower's entrance, two people, one young and one old, emerged from it. The young man was none other than Lu Qiandi, Starling Corporation's current heir. However, Lu Qiandi showed none of his usual arrogance, standing humbly and respectfully behind the black-robed elderly man. At this old man's appearance, many of the corporation heirs present gasped reflexively. Hanifeng's expression even paled when he saw the man. Why would he come here personally? Hanifeng's eyes were filled with disbelief as he looked at the approaching black-clad elder. This was because the black-clad old man was none other than the Infinity Master of Haitian City's upper zone, a mental strength master holding 2-star high-grade authority in the upper zone. In the upper zone, the Green God Company would award anyone who had become mental strength masters with high-grade authority and permanent residence in the upper zone's middle layer. However, as mental strength masters were not equal, high-grade authority was also categorized into different ranks, from 1 star to 3 stars. Most mental strength masters in the upper zone held only 1-star high-grade authority, with only a small number holding 2-star high-grade authority. For 2-star authority holders, their position in the middle layer rivaled the middle layer's general managers. The Green God Company awarded those who reached 2-star authority with 1 permanent reserve slot for the middle layer, and the authority to banish disrespectful mental strength masters from the upper zone for a duration of 1 to 3 years. Meanwhile, Han Yifeng knew that the Infinity Master Fu Jiuzhong held a slight grudge against Shi Feng. However, in his opinion, someone like Fu Jiuzhong had no reason to take action personally. At most, the Infinity Master would send some of his subordinates to harass Shi Feng. Doing more wouldn't be befitting of his status. Yet, contrary to Han Yifeng's expectations, Fu Jiuzhong had made a personal visit to Yuantian City's upper zone. After arriving before Shi Feng, Fu Jiuzhong demanded with a lofty aura, "Are you Shi Feng? The one who caused my student Wang Xianming to get kicked out of the upper zone?" When Fu Jiuzhong finished speaking, the surrounding passers-by couldn't help looking at Shi Feng with pity. At the same time, they also wondered who Shi Feng was to warrant the Infinity Master's direct intervention. Moreover, based on Fu Jiuzhong's tone, if this situation wasn't handled properly, he might very well utilize his authority to banish Shi Feng from the upper zone for some time. And once outside the safe zone known as the upper zone, Shi Feng was unlikely to keep his life. At this time, Qin Bai stepped forward with a smile and said, "Master Fu, this person here is my friend. Is there perhaps a misunderstanding here?" "Misunderstanding? I don't think so." Glancing at Qin Bai, Fu Jiuzhong said, "Also, you'd best not interfere in this matter. I don't care, even if you have your teacher's support. Master Fu, although you have 2-star high-grade authority, this is Yuantian City's upper zone," Qin Bai said with a solemn look. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Qin Bai felt a little helpless against Fu Jiuzhong right now. He was but an entry mental strength master, no match for a veteran like Fu Jiuzhong. Only his teacher could possibly put up a fight against the Infinity Master. After all, the 2-star high-grade authority wasn't just a status symbol for a mental strength master. It also symbolized strength. So what? Fu Jiuzhong sneered. "Let alone you, even if your teacher personally shows up now, I still won't give a damn." "You." Qin Bai was helpless at the moment. If Fu Jiuzhong intended to abuse his authority now, Bai Qini wouldn't be able to do anything about it with only his 1-star high-grade authority. After all, these were the Green God Company's rules. As for what kind of excuse Fu Jiuzhong would give to get the Green God Company to banish Shi Feng from the upper zone, he could simply trump up random offenses. However, as Qin Bai was thinking of how to buy time and get his teacher to come and help, Shi Feng suddenly stepped forward. "Wang Xianming, is it?" Looking at Fu Jiuzhong, Shi Feng responded neither humbly nor arrogantly, "If you're talking about that home intruder, I am indeed the one who handed him over to the Green God Company. May I know what guidance you have to provide, Master Fu?" Chapter 2906. Combating a Mental Strength Master. Although Shi Feng spoke in a tone that was neither humble nor arrogant, the surrounding passers-by and Han Yifeng couldn't help falling silent, a hint of shock appearing in their eyes. That's the Infinity Master he's talking to. Has he lost his mind? Han Yifeng felt his legs weaken when he saw Shi Feng's unyielding attitude. For longtime residents of the upper zone, mental strength masters were existences that shouldn't be provoked. All the more so a mental strength master with 2-star high-grade authority. Even the base layer's top-ranking organizations wouldn't dare to offend such an existence. Mental strength masters with 2-star authority could not only banish people from the upper zone for long periods, but also teach those who offended them a lesson with little to no repercussions. While the Green God Company might penalize the mental strength master by deducting their trade points and contribution points, such penalties were nothing for a mental strength master of such caliber. Although Shi Feng's words and manner of speaking couldn't be considered offensive to Fu Jiuzhong, it was still a slap to the face for the Infinity Master. Han Yifeng failed to understand why Shi Feng would step forward himself instead of letting Qin Bai cover for him. In his opinion, Shi Feng's action was simply insane. At this time, let alone Han Yifeng, even Han Rongrong, who had been quite courageous before and even dared to challenge Shi Feng, shuddered involuntarily in fear. This was because a bone-biting chill was enveloping her entire body right now. Killing intent. This was a frightening killing intent Han Rongrong had never experienced before. The killing intent was so intense that Han Rongrong, a half-step Honglian grandmaster, had the illusion that she would get killed the next moment. Her terror was so overwhelming that it had taken over her body, making her tremble despite herself. So this is the strength of a 2-star master? Wei Yongqianhen revealed an indescribably grim expression as she looked at Fu Jiuzhong, feeling somewhat uncomfortable before the Infinity Master's mental deterrence. She had sparred with Qin Bai previously, so she wasn't completely ignorant of the strength of mental strength masters. However, compared to Qin Bai, Fu Jiuzhong was on a completely different level. From sparring with Qin Bai, she had come to understand that his mental perception and brain activity were vastly superior to hers. If he was willing to pay the price, he could even increase his brain activity and perception sensitivity by more than tenfold at will, allowing him to make inhuman reactions. Fu Jiuzhong, on the other hand, wasn't just capable of simply boosting his thinking speed. He could already influence others with his mental will. It was akin to employing powerful hypnosis on his opponents. Most importantly, this mental deterrence wasn't directed at her but merely spillover. She found it truly hard to imagine what kind of hell the actual target of Fu Jiuzhong's mental power was experiencing right now. Of those present, only Qin Bai fared slightly better. Even so, he was still affected by Fu Jiuzhong's mental deterrence. Damn it! It's over. Fu Jiuzhong has actually broken through to that stage already. There's no way someone who hasn't reached the level of a mental strength master can resist this mental deterrence. Qin Bai inwardly cursed this situation as he endured Fu Jiuzhong's mental deterrence. In Qin Bai's opinion, Shifeng was an excellent seedling. Not only did Shifeng become a neutralizing grandmaster at a young age, but his mental strength standard had already reached the peak of the special grade. According to the report he received, Shifeng had even defeated several Henglian grandmasters simultaneously. With such ability, Shifeng might very well be only half a step away from becoming a mental strength master. Originally, Qin Bai planned to learn more about Shifeng, and then introduce Shifeng to his teacher. However, all of his plans were ruined now. Mental deterrence was something that liberated a person's deepest fears. For this reason, it was normal for the minds of people subjected to mental deterrence to collapse. If a person had weak willpower, they might even die on the spot. Even people with very strong willpower would suffer trauma when subjected to mental deterrence, which would impact their future mental growth. Normally, only 3-star mental strength masters could exhibit mental deterrence. Although Fu Jiuzhong's mental deterrence wasn't as strong as an actual 3-star master's, his use of this technique proved that he was already close to reaching the 3-star standard. He might have already taken a step into the stage. However, when Qin Bai turned to look at Shifeng, he was stunned. How is this possible? Fu Jiuzhong had clearly directed his mental deterrence at Shifeng. Yet, apart from wearing a slightly solemn expression, Shifeng showed no fear or discomfort on his face. It was evident that he could withstand the Infinity Master's mental deterrence. In fact, he was enduring it much better than even Qin Bai. Ha! Fu Jiuzhong remained mostly unfazed even after seeing Shifeng's reaction, sneering, I initially had suspicions when I heard Tiandi say you might have become a mental strength master already, but I didn't think you had really become one. When Fu Jiuzhong finished speaking, everyone present turned to Shifeng in disbelief. Han Yifeng, in particular, was thunderstruck by this revelation. Is he still human? The first time Han Yifeng met Shifeng, the latter was merely the guild leader of a large guild. Although Shifeng possessed some strength at the time, it was still insignificant in Han Yifeng's eyes. The next time they met, Shifeng had already become a resident in the upper zone, with a considerable amount of resources that could be traded for contribution points. Now Shifeng had even become a mental strength master, an existence many corporations operating in the upper zone's base layer feared. Shifeng's growth speed was simply out of this world. Han Yifeng wasn't the only one shocked by this revelation. Qin Bai similarly felt his heart pounding madly. A mental strength master under the age of 25? Previously, Qin Bai still had his doubts about Shifeng being a mental strength master. However, since Fu Jiuzhong had said so, then it must be true. Nevertheless, he found it difficult to digest this information. Mental strength masters were special existences in the upper zone, the goal of countless young talents. However, typically, one could already be proud of oneself if one became a mental strength master by the age of 60 or 70. Qin Bai's achievement of becoming a mental strength master in his 30s already made him a rare talent that only appeared once every several decades in Yuantian City's upper zone. However, compared to Shifeng, Qin Bai's achievement paled significantly. At Shifeng's age, the growth rate of his mental strength was still at its peak. Only after the age of 30 would his growth slow than 5 years of rapid growth. If he continued developing himself, he could definitely become a 3-star mental strength master in the future, and possibly even reach the legendary Grandmaster standard. When Qin Bai thought about the possibility of introducing Shifeng to his teacher, excitement filled his heart. However, before Qin Bai could grow excited for long, Fu Jiuzhong suddenly changed his tone and said coldly, "Your achievement of becoming a mental strength master might be excellent, but do you think you can behave arrogantly in front of me just because you've become one?" After saying so, Fu Jiuzhong suddenly punched at Shifeng. Although Fu Jiuzhong had only executed a textbook punch, in everyone's eyes, this punch seemed to carry the power of heaven and earth. The power of this punch was unstoppable, and everyone instinctively tried to run away. Not good. Qin Bai's expression immediately underwent a drastic change. Dodge it. Fu Jiuzhong's punch didn't just exude a mighty aura that daunted others' hearts. The Infinity Master had also removed the limiters on his body to exhibit 100% of his body's strength. Moreover, he had perfectly concentrated this strength into his fist. Even a bona fide 3-star master would have difficulty blocking this punch. It was evident that after seeing Shifeng's true potential, Fu Jiuzhong intended to cripple Shifeng to rid himself of a future threat. Shifeng, the target of Fu Jiuzhong's punch, understood how powerful the oncoming attack was. Fu Jiuzhong's fist wasn't the only threat like most people thought. There was also the intent from the Infinity Master's fist. Although the fist intent didn't have a tangible form, it was by no means harmless. Moreover, even if Shifeng could evade Fu Jiuzhong's fist intent, he couldn't dodge the punch itself. And although Shifeng didn't know how powerful Fu Jiuzhong's punch was, he had a hunch that if he allowed the fist to connect, he would end up either crippled or dead. And worse, he couldn't stop the punch with his current strength utilization technique. This was because he was currently incapable of removing all of the limiters his brain placed on his body. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. You know, I will not let things end like this. As Shifeng watched Fu Jiuzhong's fist moving closer and closer to him, his brain raced, thinking of ways to block the punch. When Fu Jiuzhong's fist was only half a meter away, a potentially viable technique suddenly occurred to Shifeng, a technique he had wanted to use in the real world all this time but couldn't due to physical fitness and mental capacity limitations. Block it! With a shout, Shifeng concentrated the strength of his body and removed the limiters on his 2 arms. He then brandished his arms as if he were brandishing swords and instantly executed the sword technique he had used thousands of times in God's domain. Swords Transmigration. Chapter 2907. Taking on a 3-star mental strength master. Bang. Along with the sound of an explosion, the ambient air fluctuated, and even those standing more than 10 meters away from Shifeng and Fu Jiuzhong felt these shock waves. The next moment, Fu Jiuzhong's punch came to an abrupt end, while Shifeng stumbled several steps back before he managed to stabilize his body. The outcome of the initial confrontation between the 2 mental strength masters was clear for all to see. However, this result had Hanifeng and the others looking at Shifeng in shock and disbelief. He blocked it? How did he do it? Fu Jiuzhong's punch was akin to a behemoth's attack. One could tell how much power the punch carried just by looking at the shattered stone slabs under Fu Jiuzhong's feet. The upper zone's pavement was extraordinary, its hardness comparable to steel. Even a Honglian Grandmaster's full-powered attack would, at most, crack it. Yet, the stone slabs directly under Fu Jiuzhong's feet had basically disintegrated, while the adjacent slabs had web-like cracks spread across them. Fu Jiuzhong's punch could probably knock a car back over a dozen meters. The attack undoubtedly reached inhuman levels already. What did he do just now? Qin Bai stared at the uninjured Shifeng in confusion. Compared to the other spectators, Qin Bai had a far better understanding of how much power Fu Jiuzhong's punch carried. An entry-level mental strength master would be fortunate to sustain only minor injuries from the punch, let alone emerge intact. Typically, if the average human removed all of the limiters restricting their body, they could lift an entire car. Meanwhile, Fu Jiuzhong was a mental strength master who had tempered his body over several decades. One could easily imagine how much power he could exert if he removed his limiters and concentrated all his strength into his fist. Of course, executing such a move would also place a huge burden on the body. If an ordinary person tried replicating Fu Jiuzhong's move without having absolute control over their physical body, they would most likely end up crippled afterward. This was because the limiters the brain placed was a form of protection for one's body. However, it was a different story for mental strength masters of Fu Jiuzhong's caliber. Currently, not only did Fu Jiuzhong have perfect control over his body's strength, but he could also freely turn his body's limiters on and off. So long as he turned off his limiters the moment he attacked and instantly turned them back on after executing his attack, he could minimize the damage to his body. He might even be able to offset the damage completely by using his body's resilience. And this was also what made 3-star mental strength masters so frightening. On the other hand, Shi Feng was evidently incapable of removing all of his body's limiters right now. Yet, by relying on a strange technique and incredible speed, he had successfully blocked Fu Jiuzhong's punch. More precisely, he had deflected the power of the Infinity Master's punch and received only part of the attack's power and impact. This feat was simply incredible. In reality, Qin Bai wasn't the only one surprised by this outcome. Shi Feng himself felt shocked and ecstatic. He never thought his plan would succeed. Although he had failed to fully replicate Sword's transmigration just now, the incomplete technique still allowed him to resist Fu Jiuzhong's full-powered blow. However, Shi Feng now felt his mind stagnating slightly, due to using Sword's transmigration with his mortal body. His brain had evidently overloaded itself to enable his body to execute the technique. He diverted my strength? Fu Jiuzhong eyed Shi Feng in incomprehension. He couldn't understand how Shi Feng's 2 strange chopping strikes had managed to scatter the power in his fist. At the moment of contact, he had felt some kind of power invade his body and deform his posture slightly. This, in turn, caused the power of his punch to plummet and allowed Shi Feng to escape unscathed. Was it luck? Fu Jiuzhong shook his head, dismissing his thoughts. He promptly dashed toward Shi Feng and executed a flurry of punches, giving him no time to catch a breather or create another miracle. Fu Jiuzhong had come to Yuantian City's upper zone intending to teach Shi Feng a lesson, have Shi Feng give up a significant portion of Zero Wings shares, and avenge his student. After seeing Shi Feng's potential, though, he realized there was no way the young man would give up Zero Wings shares. However, reconciliation between them wasn't possible after Fu Jiuzhong had sent the various corporations' experts after Shi Feng. Fu Jiuzhong also couldn't forgive the arrogant behavior Shi Feng took in front of him. Hence, only one path remained open to Fu Jiuzhong: crippling Shi Feng and utilizing his mental deterrence to arouse Shi Feng's inner fears. Even if Shi Feng was a mental strength master, this would still leave an indelible trauma in his heart. If that happened, Shi Feng's future as a mental strength master would be over. And while Fu Jiuzhong would suffer repercussions from the Green God Company afterward, the penalty wouldn't be anything severe. After all, there was no way the Green God Company would choose to lose a 3-star mental strength master after already losing a young talent. Fu Jiuzhong executed his punches with all his might, without a fixed pattern. Of course, with how fast his attacks were, Fu Jiuzhong couldn't concentrate all his strength into every punch. Hence, the punches he currently executed were significantly weaker than his first one. Even so, they still weren't attacks an ordinary mental strength master could receive. After images of Fu Jiuzhong's fists filled the space between Fu Jiuzhong and Shi Feng. Even ordinary mental strength masters, who could amplify their perception by more than tenfold, couldn't adequately capture every one of these punches with their senses. Is he nuts? Shi Feng's complexion changed as he faced Fu Jiuzhong's attacks. Even an expert of Fu Jiuzhong's caliber would suffer serious injuries if he executed so many attacks without any limiters. The fact that he was doing so was simply ridiculous. However, Shi Feng also had to admit that Fu Jiuzhong's attacks were effective. He could hardly keep up with the attacks, let alone execute Sword's transmigration to deflect them. When Fu Jiuzhong's punches were about to reach him, Shi Feng gritted his teeth and liberated the limiters on his muscles once more. He then brandished his arms as if they were 2 long swords. Swords orbit. Bang, bang, bang. Less than 1 meter separated Fu Jiuzhong and Shi Feng as they clashed in front of the Green God Tower. Although none of the surrounding pedestrians could see the arms of either mental strength master, the numerous thunderous explosions and shock waves made everyone feel as if they were standing in a storm. 2 seconds into the clash, Shifeng began retreating step by step, evidently at a disadvantage. And although Shifeng had successfully deflected all of Fu Jiuzhong's punches thus far, his complexion grew paler and paler as time passed. "Let's see how long you can last." Fu Jiuzhong sneered when he saw Shifeng's poor complexion. Although Fu Jiuzhong was sustaining heavy damage by executing so many attacks with his limiters fully liberated, the damage wasn't unbearable. At worst, he would have to consume life potions for a month, but all his injuries would eventually disappear as if they never existed. However, it was a different story for Shifeng. If the young man failed to hold on now, he would be crippled in the future. The seconds ticked by one after another. Qin Bai, who was watching the entire fight, grew increasingly anxious. "Senior brother, is there nothing you can do?" Weiyang Qianhen asked when she saw Shifeng's ashen face. In a frustrated tone, Qin Bai responded, "I want to step in, but the fight between them is no longer at a level where I can intervene. I might even make the situation worse for Shifeng. All we can do is wait for teacher to arrive." Qin Bai wanted nothing more than to intervene in the fight, but he simply lacked the ability to do so. After all, even after pushing his senses to their limits, he still couldn't keep up with Shifeng's and Fu Jiuzhong's movements. If he charged in recklessly, he might get sent flying by some random attack. 10 seconds into the fight, Fu Jiuzhong's complexion began turning red, while Shifeng's turned deathly pale. A look of deep fatigue also surfaced in Shifeng's eyes, and it was evident he could last only a few more seconds. "Die!" Fu Jiuzhong accelerated his punches when he noticed Shifeng faltering. He planned to end the fight right here and now. Upon seeing this, Qin Bai reflexively closed his eyes, while Weiyang Qianhen's complexion turned grim. Just as Fu Jiuzhong's fists were about to overwhelm Shifeng's defense, a rebuke suddenly echoed in everyone's ears. "Both of you, stop fighting this instant." Although this voice wasn't deafening, it still stimulated everyone's mind and compelled them to obedience. Among those present, only Fu Jiuzhong, Shifeng, and Qin Bai remained mostly unaffected by the voice. However, immediately afterward, an incomparably powerful mental deterrence assaulted Fu Jiuzhong and Shifeng, causing them to stumble back several steps. This scene amazed the surrounding spectators, and everyone couldn't help wondering about the identity of the voice's owner. When everyone turned toward the voice's origin, what they saw were 2 people walking out of the Green God Tower's entrance. One was a beautiful woman with her black hair tied into a ponytail, and the other was a white-clad old man walking with a hunched back and a cane. Most of the people present quickly recognized the woman. She was none other than Xia Qingying, the base layer's general manager. The old man Xia Qingying was supporting, though, was someone unfamiliar to them. Only Qin Bai recognized the old man, and he couldn't help a look of panic and disbelief at seeing the old man. Looking at the approaching old man, Fu Jiuzhong gnashed his teeth and yelled, "Wu, I'm only teaching an arrogant kid a lesson. Are you going to interfere in this as well?" The white-clad old man's name was Xiaowuan. In addition to being the middle-layer general manager of Yuantian City's upper zone, he was also a bona fide 3-star mental strength master, someone with real authority in Yuantian City's upper zone. Rumor had it that he was only half a step away from becoming a mental strength grandmaster. However, for Fu Jiuzhong, who had just recently become a 3-star mental strength master, Xiaoyuan wasn't in existence to fear. "Jiuzhong, this is Yuantian City's upper zone. Do you take this place for a joke?" Xiaoyuan said as he glanced at Fu Jiuzhong. "This matter ends here. Shifeng is already a talent Yuantian City's upper zone has set its eyes on. I won't sit still if you persist in making a scene." Xiaoyuan's words thundered in Fu Jiuzhong's ears, causing his expression to turn ugly. Fu Jiuzhong then glared at Shifeng and said coldly, "Consider yourself lucky today, kid. However, don't think you'll be as lucky next time." After saying so, Fu Jiuzhong got back into his maglev car together with Lu Qiandi and departed the area, disinclined to exchange any more words with Xiaowuan. "Teacher, are we going to let Shifeng go just like that?" Lu Qiandi asked. With them having thoroughly offended Shifeng, if they didn't cripple Shifeng now, he would definitely become a thorn in their side with his extraordinary potential. After taking a deep breath, Fu Jiuzhong shook his head and said, "That old ghost is already close to crossing that threshold. I can't go up against him. However, that doesn't mean I'll let that kid off. After I apply for 3-star high-grade authority and get it approved, I'll have one chance to train in the core area and solidify my gains. Once that happens, that kid won't be able to stop me as easily as he did today." Lu Tiandi breathed out a sigh of relief at Fu Jiuzhong's words. If Fu Jiuzhong could train in the upper zone's core area even for a short period, he would definitely return stronger, and would have a much easier time dealing with Shifeng. Most importantly, Fu Jiuzhong could afford to do a lot more things once he gained 3-star high-grade authority. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Meanwhile, after Fu Jiuzhong and Lu Tiandi left, Shifeng hurriedly approached Xia Qingying and Xiao Wuan to thank them. If not for Xiao Yuan's intervention, Shifeng really would have succumbed to Fu Jiuzhong's attacks. This little fellow has quite the talent, Xiao Wuan thought to himself as he scrutinized Shifeng. He then said, "Qingying mentioned you to me before. She said you were even more talented than Bai. I initially thought she was joking, so it is fortunate I had some business here today. Otherwise, Fu Jiuzhong would have crippled you. Thank you for helping me, Elder Xia." "Thank you as well, General Manager Xia," Shifeng said as he looked at Xiao Yuan and Xia Qingying nodding at Shifeng. Xia Qingying said, "You really surprised me. Although I've long since known you would become a mental strength master sooner or later, I didn't expect you to break through in such a short time. It seems I didn't invite my grandfather here in vain." Shifeng grew a little awkward after hearing Xia Qingying's words, unsure of how to explain himself. After all, his rapid growth was a complete accident. "Ahem, that's enough talking. You'll have plenty of chances to talk in the future," Xiao Yuan said, faking a cough. He then looked at Shifeng and said, "Kid, now that you've become a mental strength master, come with me to the middle layer." Chapter 2908 Middle Layer. We're going to the middle layer now? Shifeng was a little surprised by Xiao Yuan's words. According to his understanding, while one could indeed live in the middle layer once one became a mental strength master, one would first need to clear the Green God Company's internal test and review. One couldn't enter the middle layer simply on the assumption that one was a mental strength master already. After all, the middle layer was an incredibly important location for the Green God Company. Even the middle layer's official residents needed to undergo strict inspections every time they entered and left. When Qin Bai overheard Xiao Wuan's words, he was dumbfounded. Qin Bai still remembered that after he became a mental strength master, he had to go through an incredibly troublesome process to gain access to the middle layer. Yet, Shifeng could enter the middle layer before even receiving the Green God Company's recognition. However, Xiao Yuan indeed had the authority to make such a decision as the middle layer's general manager. Even if Shifeng weren't a mental strength master, Xiao Yuan could still bring him into the middle layer, just without official residential status. Of course, although you haven't passed our internal test and review yet, the fact that you held your ground against Fu Jiuzhong proves that you are indeed a mental strength master, Xiao Yuan said, nodding. He then smiled and continued, "Since you are now one of Yuantian City's upper zone's mental strength masters, you naturally have to get registered at the middle layer immediately. Or are you telling me you don't want the middle layer's residential status?" "Of course not," Shifeng said hurriedly. "It will naturally be wonderful if I can get my residential status for the middle zone right now." The resources available to the middle layer's residents were beyond the reach of the base layer's residents. Specifically, he could purchase life water once he gained middle layer residential status. "Good. Let's go then." After Xiao Wuan finished speaking, he waved his hand, and a maglev limousine marked with the Green God Company's logo descended from the sky. He then entered the limousine together with Xia Qingying and Shifeng, and the three of them flew straight toward the mountain's halfway point. At this sight, Hani Feng and the other corporation heirs aiming to enter the middle layer inevitably grew envious. Brother Shi's status is going to skyrocket now. Hani Feng was filled with complex emotions as he watched Shifeng depart. Hani Feng had constantly been seeking to gain the privilege to live in the middle layer. Yet Shifeng now had this privilege at his fingertips. Shifeng had even gained the attention of Xiao Yuan, the middle layer's general manager. Even after entering the middle layer, Shifeng would not have to fear being targeted. What a pity. Qin Bai also sighed inwardly at this situation. If the middle layer's big shots found out about Shifeng's talent, they would desperately try to get him as their student. Qin Bai's teacher wouldn't be an exception. Now though, Xiao Yuan had gotten ahead of everyone. A mental strength master, is it? I'll soon catch up to you. Unlike Qin Bai and the others, when Wei Yangqianhen saw Shifeng departing for the middle layer, the urge to compete with Shifeng bloomed in her heart. On the other side, Shifeng's group arrived in the middle layer after going through multiple electronic scans and inspections. Upon entering the mist-shrouded area, Shifeng felt a significant portion of his accumulated mental fatigue clear up. The middle layer's recovery effects were drastically better than those of the large mansion's environment. When Xiao Yuan brought Shifeng to a mansion flanked by a lush mountainside and a small waterfall, Shifeng was completely stunned by the environment. Isn't the environment here a little too amazing? It's at least twice as good as the environment I felt when I entered the middle layer. Even without doing anything, I can probably live up to 160 or 170 years old in such an environment, Shifeng exclaimed as he experienced the changes the mansion's environment brought to his body. This is one of only 20 top-tier mansions in the middle layer. Let alone 160 or 170, a Honglian Grandmaster can live up to 200 here without any problems, Xiao Yuan said, chuckling. As the Green God Company's life technology continues improving, the lifespan of the middle layer's residents will also increase. Eventually, this place will let even ordinary people live up to 200 years old. As for mental strength masters like yourself, you might live to celebrate your 300th birthday. 300? Shifeng was a little dazed. 300 years was already enough for a change in dynasties during ancient times. That's right. Although it is still somewhat difficult to reach such an age in the middle layer right now, the improvement is only a matter of time, Xiao Yuan said, nodding. However, if you become a mental strength grandmaster, reaching 300 won't be difficult at all. Are mental strength grandmasters that strong? Shifeng asked in surprise. With his current physical fitness, even with the support of life potions and the middle layer's environment, he could, at most, live to around 200 years old. He dared not think about living up to 300. Yet, Xiao Yuan stated that a mental strength grandmaster could currently live up to 3 centuries. This was incredible. Of course, mental strength grandmasters are much stronger than you think. They can exert 100% control over their brains. To ordinary people, they are no different from gods. The Green God Company's creator was also a mental strength grandmaster, Xiao Yuan said, awe and envy appearing on his face. Shifeng was stunned once more. The Green God Company was the most influential corporation in the world. The combined influence of every other corporation worldwide couldn't match the Green God Company's influence. Shifeng never imagined that the founder of this corporation was a mental strength grandmaster. This was simply unbelievable. Seeing Shifeng's dazed expression, Xiao Yuan added, you too have a small possibility of becoming a mental strength grandmaster. It is for this possibility that I brought you to the middle layer. Only by living here can you better develop your mental strength. Letting you remain in the base layer is simply a huge waste. Shifeng immediately came to a realization when he heard Xiao Yuan's words. It was no wonder Xiao Yuan brought him straight to the middle layer without undergoing the Green God Company's test. When Xiao Yuan saw Shifeng's contemplative expression, he smiled faintly and asked, you're thinking that with your potential, I'm underestimating you by saying that you only have a small possibility of becoming a mental strength grandmaster, right? Shifeng didn't deny Xiao Yuan's guess. In his opinion, if the Tier 5 concentration standard of God's domain represented the master standard for mental strength in the real world, then the Tier 6 concentration standard should correspond to the mental strength grandmaster standard. Meanwhile, Shifeng was relatively confident that he could get promoted to Tier 6 in his current state. After all, he had an ancient god's legacy. He even had items that improved concentration, such as the Soul Water and Crystal of Souls. Raising his concentration to the Tier 6 standard with the help of these items shouldn't be difficult. As if having seen through Shifeng's thoughts, Xiao Yuan said, even if your concentration reaches the Tier 6 standard in God's domain, you will still be a long way from becoming a mental strength grandmaster. According to God's domain's concentration categorization, the Tier 6 concentration standard is only equivalent to the half-step mental strength grandmaster standard. Currently, you are still far from becoming a half-step grandmaster, let alone becoming an actual grandmaster. You are, at best, close to the 2-star master standard. The Tier 6 concentration standard is equivalent to only the half-step mental strength grandmaster standard? Shifeng was startled. Shifeng had experienced what it was like to have Tier 6 concentration, thanks to the light of 2 worlds, and the experience was amazing beyond imagination. With Tier 6 concentration, he could suppress even ordinary Tier 5 existences with his mental oppression. Tier 4 players that weren't at the peak of Tier 4 would even lose consciousness on the spot. In his opinion, this should already be equivalent to the rumored mental strength grandmaster standard. Yet, according to Xiao Wuyuan, that wasn't the case at all. If Xiao Wuyuan was telling the truth, then Shifeng couldn't even begin to imagine how powerful a mental strength grandmaster's mind was. Can you not make it sound as if half-step mental strength grandmasters are very weak? I'll have you know that even Yuantian City's upper zone has only 3 half-step grandmasters, while some of the other upper zones have only 2. Our upper zone is considered above average already, Xiao Wuyuan said, rolling his eyes at Shifeng. Also, I managed to assign you this top-tier mansion, only because of one other person's recommendation. Otherwise, even with your excellent talent, you'd only get to live in a basic mansion in the middle layer. You'd need first to become a 3-star master to live here. Another person's recommendation? Shifeng grew curious. Most of his acquaintances in the upper zone lived in the base layer, and he knew none of the big shots living in the middle layer. You know this person. She's the person you've been secretly investigating. Her ID in God's domain is Phoenix Rain, Xiao Wuyuan said. If not for this girl's recommendation, you would have received a similar treatment to the other mental strength masters. Phoenix Rain. Shifeng was surprised. She's also living in the middle layer? What is her current condition? Shifeng had conducted plenty of investigations into Phoenix Rain. After all, Ji Luorong was very concerned about her elder sister. However, he never managed to find any information. He never thought that he would receive news of Phoenix Rain from Xiao Wuyuan. Moreover, it was even Phoenix Rain who had recommended him to the middle layer. I can only say that it isn't good. Apart from that, there is nothing else you should know right now, Xiao Wuyuan replied, shaking his head. To be precise, you still don't have the qualifications to know. Her condition isn't good? Shifeng fell into deep thought. After a moment he asked Elder Xia, how do I get the qualifications you speak of? Originally, Shifeng didn't hold much hope of acquiring information about Phoenix Rain. This was because Phoenix Rain's situation definitely involved a huge secret. He was fortunate to obtain even this slight bit of information. But now that he was a mental strength master, if he could help Phoenix Rain, he would naturally do so. After all, Phoenix Rain had helped him a lot previously. Phoenix Rain's little sister, Ji Luorong, was now an important member of Zero Wing as well. There was no reason not to help. If you make a significant contribution to the Green God Company and elevate your authority to the 3-star high-grade status, you can know a little more, Xiao Wuyuan said after giving the matter some thought. Significant contribution? Upon hearing that he had a chance, Shifeng asked hurriedly, may I know how many contribution points I will need for that? Significant contributions cannot be weighed using contribution points, Xiao Wuyuan replied, shaking his head. If you want to make a significant contribution, the only available avenue for you right now is driving off the Outer World's NPC army in God's domain. If you can do that, you might even be able to meet with her. Repel the Outer World NPC army? Shifeng frowned slightly at Xiao Wuyuan's answer. The Outer World's NPC army was different from the Outer World's player army. After all, the player army didn't even have a single Tier 5 player in its ranks. In contrast, the NPC army had Tier 5 NPCs and might even have demigod-level NPCs. Just stopping the NPC army's advance was already a difficult feat repelling. It was simply impossible for the Eastern Continent's native forces. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. You should stop thinking about this matter and focus on developing your mental strength, Xiao Wuyuan said. Although you've become a mental strength master and entered the middle layer, Fu Jiuzhong has already become a 3-star master. If he's really intent on targeting you, you'll probably have to spend the rest of your life cooped up in here. Outside of the middle layer, he'll have plenty of ways to deal with you. Shifeng nodded in agreement. Currently, the Infinity Master indeed posed a significant threat to him. If Xiao Wuyuan hadn't appeared today, Shifeng definitely would have suffered severe injuries. Moreover, he couldn't stay in the middle layer or upper zone forever, as he needed to manage Zero Wing's affairs in the outside world. Elder Xia, may I know how I can purchase life water? Shifeng asked. Shifeng might not be able to leave the upper zone right now, but with Fu Jiuzhong's status and pride, the latter definitely wouldn't stoop so low as to target Zero Wing's other members. After all, none of Zero Wing's other members could pose a threat to him. And if Fu Jiuzhong targeted Zero Wing's other members, the upper zone's other residents would look down upon him. However, Shifeng couldn't discount the possibility of Fu Jiuzhong having the upper zone's various corporations secretly target Zero Wing either. Hence, the first thing Shifeng needed to do now was let Gentle Snow and Aqua Rose recover. With their strength, protecting Zero Wing from Fu Jiuzhong's henchmen wouldn't be difficult. Chapter 2909 Soul Improves. Purchase life water? Looking at Shifeng's slightly pale complexion, Xiao Yuan said in confusion, "Your current authority is 1-star high grade, so you're allowed to exchange for only 1 bottle per year. However, the main purpose of life water is to replenish life. With a mental strength master's regenerative abilities, you can just use the life potions or the meditation potions exclusive to the middle layer to repair minor physical or mental damages. Are you sure you want to exchange for life water? I can only exchange for 1 bottle per year?" Shifeng frowned slightly at Xiao Yuan's words. In Gentle Snow and Aqua Rose's current condition, they would easily survive for more than a year if they lived in the base layer's large mansion. However, Zero Wing couldn't afford to wait for a year. After all, Gentle Snow and Aqua Rose had many responsibilities they needed to handle. This was especially true for the management of the guild's headquarters in the real world. Fire Dance and Lei Bao couldn't manage the entire headquarters by themselves. Not to mention, Fire Dance and the others would be coming to the upper zone to train soon. There are alternatives available if you wish to exchange for more life water, Xia Qingying said when she saw Shifeng's disappointed look. Smiling faintly, she continued, "As you managed to become a mental strength master before the age of 30, the Green God Company will be giving you a reward." "A reward?" Shifeng immediately grew interested. "That's right. It is a reward for mental strength masters under the age of 30, Xiao Yuan said, nodding in agreement. "However, I do not recommend you use this reward to exchange for life water. This reward is something even 3-star masters desire greatly, as it can be used to redeem the privilege to enter and train in the core area, which is the top layer of this mountain. This privilege is for 1 month, and it will greatly help in the development of your mental strength. Normally, only after a person becomes a 3-star master would they get an opportunity to exchange for this privilege, and it's for only 10 days. Compared to this privilege, life water is something you can redeem any time. Are you certain you want to exchange for life water?" "Yes," Shifeng answered without hesitation. "All right then. I really don't know what's going through the minds of you young people these days." Xiao Yuan sighed when he saw Shifeng's determined expression, evidently dissatisfied with Shifeng's decision. He then turned to Xia Qingying and said, "I still have to report this matter to the higher-ups, so I'll leave the rest of the explanation to you." Xia Qingying nodded obediently in response. After Xiao Yuan finished speaking, he turned away and left the mansion, having no intention of continuing his conversation with Shifeng. Shifeng smiled bitterly at the old man's reaction. "Don't mind it too much. Grandpa is just grumpy that you failed to meet his expectations. He doesn't know your circumstances." Xia Qingying consoled Shifeng after seeing Xiao Yuan leave. "Since you wish to exchange for life water, you need only 2 bottles, correct? I can exchange for 2 bottles? Shifeng was stunned. Originally, he thought that he could obtain only 1 bottle of life water as his reward, and that he would have to spend trade points and contribution points to exchange for the other one. However, based on Xia Qingying's tone, it appeared that he could receive more than just 1 bottle of life water as his reward. This reward allows you to exchange for 3 bottles of life water. If you only need 2 bottles, I recommend you replace the remaining bottle with meditation potions. The meditation potion is more effective than the phantom potion, and also functions to repair a person's mental state. Normally, a 1-star master can exchange for only 5 bottles per year. But if you trade in your 3rd bottle of life water, you can get 10 meditation potions. "Okay, I'll take the 10 meditation potions," Shifeng said with a nod, astonished by the reward the Green God Company offered. This reward was hundreds of times better than what he received for clearing the mental path above the age of 20. Shifeng couldn't help being in awe of the Green God Company's generosity. Now, he realized how valuable the privilege to enter the top layer was. It was no wonder Xiao Wuan felt disappointed at his decision. Nodding at Shifeng's reply, Xiao Qingying said, "You probably can't return to the base layer anytime soon, so I'll pass the life water to those two on your behalf. As for the meditation potions, you can exchange for them through the mansion's storage room." "I'll have to trouble you with that, General Manager Xia," Shifeng said gratefully. "It's no trouble. This is also within the scope of my duties. You are, after all, a talent I discovered. If you perform well in the middle layer, it'll be of great help to me," Xiao Qingying said, waving her hand. "All right, I won't disturb your rest any longer." After saying so, Xiao Qingying boarded another maglev limousine and departed the middle layer, leaving Shifeng alone to observe his top-tier mansion. Compared to the base layer's large mansion, this waterfall mansion had a slightly larger footprint. The waterfall alone occupied an area of 2 basketball courts. The water vapor coming from the waterfall was also incredible. Shifeng felt his body becoming refreshed after inhaling only a mouthful of it. The regenerative effects of this water vapor probably nearly rivaled those of the S-rank nutrient fluid without any side effects. This small waterfall was an unlimited supply of weakened S-rank nutrient fluids. If sold to the outside world, it could definitely fetch an astronomical price. Probably no corporation in the outside world would ever dream that something like this waterfall could exist. After all, S-rank nutrient fluids were incomparably precious to the outside world's corporations, with only a very limited amount available each year. In fact, even the corporations operating in the upper zone's base layer would never think of drinking S-rank nutrient fluids like water. After Shifeng finished marveling at the waterfall, he made his way into the mansion. So this is why anyone who has lived in the middle layer before would never wish to leave it again. Realization dawned upon Shifeng as he looked at the hall in front of him. After he entered the mansion and closed the doors, the sound of splashing water cut off completely. The mansion's sound insulation was perfect. In addition, the special energy flowing inside the mansion was twice as strong as outside. If ordinary people lived in such an environment, even if they did nothing but lie on the ground, their physical fitness would still reach the half-step Henglian Grandmaster standard. If they trained their bodies a little, developing their physical fitness to the standard of Henglian Grandmasters would be no trouble at all. Moreover, this special energy also had an effect on a person's mental state, allowing a person to remain mentally energized as well as maintain an ethereal mood. If a person trained in such an environment for a long period, even if they didn't become a mental strength master, they would be close. Shifeng could easily imagine how scary it would be to go from living in such an environment to living in the base layer's environment. The transition would be akin to being a billionaire living a rich and happy life in one moment and then suddenly becoming an ordinary person in the next moment. No ordinary human could possibly accept such a drastic change. It also explained why Feng Shihan was so adamant in preserving her middle layer reserve slot. So long as Feng Shihan could remain in the middle layer, her chances of becoming a mental strength master would be at least double than if she lived in the base layer. Is this the storage room? While touring the mansion, Shifeng noticed a small room made entirely out of some unique metal. When he entered the room and accessed the interface inside, he had to marvel at the Green God Company's financial prowess. According to the introduction displayed, the storage room housed all the resources available for exchange in the middle layer. This storage room even had life water stocked. Through the storage room, he could immediately obtain the potion he wanted. He wouldn't have to spend time on a trip to the Green God Tower during emergencies. This was a great convenience provided to the middle layer's residents. Seeing this, Shifeng decided to give this exchange system a try. The next moment, several laser scanners scanned Shifeng's body and acquired his biometric data. After verifying his identity, the room's interface displayed the resources available to him. Currently, he had 10 meditation potions to his name, each worth 4 million trade points and 100,000 contribution points. 4 million trade points might not be anything to the base layer's corporations, but 100,000 contribution points was an entirely different story. Even the 5 States Corporation would have a heart attack if it had to spend so many contribution points on one item. For the time being, Feng chose to redeem only one meditation potion. According to the product introduction, the meditation potion had to be stored in a special environment. And if taken out of storage, it could last for only 1 day in the outside world. After 1 day, the drug would lose its effects. Hence, he should only exchange for the amount he needed. How interesting. When Feng spread his mental perception over the dark blue potion in his hand, he actually sensed weak mental fluctuations from it. Normally, he would pick up such mental fluctuations only from living creatures. However, he didn't dwell on the matter, consuming the meditation potion immediately. After all, his mental state was in dire need of it right now. Feng had kept his brain overclocked throughout his fight with Fu Jiuzhong. While he had managed to smile and converse normally with Xiao Yuan and Xiao Qingying earlier, that was possible only because of his powerful willpower. If someone else were in his shoes, they probably would have passed out already. The moment Feng consumed the meditation potion, the scorching heat he felt in his brain instantly cooled. His complexion also rapidly changed from pale white to rosy amazing. This is simply amazing. Feng was dumbfounded when he sensed his mental state. With just one meditation potion, not only did he fully recover from his weakened state, but his mental state had also become surprisingly excellent. He even sensed faint improvements to his mental perception. These changes felt as if he had just consumed a crystal of souls from God's domain. With the meditation potion's effects, I will definitely improve further after consuming 10 bottles. This really makes a person wonder how the Green God Company managed to produce such a miracle drug. If this thing can be mass-produced, it will become possible to mass-produce mental strength masters. Feng was astounded as he looked at the 9 remaining meditation potions he could exchange. After recovering to peak condition, Feng promptly logged back into God's domain. Although he currently didn't have any good ideas on how to repel the Outer World's NPC army, he could share the news of Phoenix Rain's location and condition with Ji Luorong. This would, at least, give Ji Luorong some hope, and the girl wouldn't have to worry about her elder sister's whereabouts every day. Twin Towers Kingdom, Sky Spring City. When Feng entered God's domain again, he was surprised to find that his perception of the world around him had changed slightly. What's going on? Feng was greatly confused as he perceived the world around him. For some reason, his brain's recognition of God's domain was a bit different, and the world of God's domain now felt even more realistic than before. Is it because I used a combat technique in the real world? Feng could sense that his soul was stronger. This, in turn, directly elevated his concentration, which was previously almost Tier 5 advanced rank, to the Tier 5 peak rank. Now, he was only half a step from Tier 6 concentration. However, before Feng could snap out of his daze, he suddenly received a call from Fang Shihan. "Guild leader, are you alright?" Fang Shihan asked worriedly as she looked at Feng through the video call. "I heard you clashed with Fu Jiuzhong. Fu Jiuzhong is now a 3-star mental strength master in Haitian City's upper zone. Even if you're a mental strength master, your body will still be affected significantly after fighting with him." The existence of 3-star mental strength masters was no secret to middle-layer residents. It wasn't difficult for the base layer's top-tier corporations to find out about them either. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Oh, relax. I've made a full recovery already, Feng replied, smiling. He was even tempted to say that should he clash with Fu Jiuzhong again, he definitely wouldn't end up in as miserable a state as before. That's wonderful. Fang Shihan breathed out a sigh of relief. She then said, "Guild leader, while you were logged off, the Outer World NPCs started their invasion. Several empires have already clashed with the Outer World NPCs and suffered heavy casualties. According to our estimates, the battle at the Twin Towers Kingdom will begin soon. So far, I've already contacted the various powers based in the Twin Towers Kingdom, Star Moon Kingdom, and several neighboring kingdoms that aren't embroiled in the war for a meeting in Sky Spring City. However, I'm not particularly confident we can get the neighboring kingdoms' player forces to cooperate with us since the superpowers based in the engaged empires are doing their best to recruit them." "Alright, I understand," Feng said, nodding. "Also, tell them that our meeting venue will be changed to Star Moon City." "Change the venue to Star Moon City?" Fang Shihan was a little confused. While Zero Wing indeed possessed a guild residence in Star Moon City, the royal capital wasn't one of Zero Wing's main NPC cities. Hence, Zero Wing didn't have much manpower available there. Meanwhile, organizing the meeting this time required a lot of manpower. Not to mention, in terms of quality and quantity, Zero Wing's members in Sky Spring City were far superior to those in Star Moon City. If they held the meeting in Sky Spring City, Zero Wing could better display its current strength and raise the various player forces' confidence in defending the Twin Towers Kingdom. MHM said it at Star Moon City. Shifeng said in a determined tone. I understand. I'll notify them right away. Feng Shihan didn't pursue the matter. She then disconnected the call and began contacting the various powers. Meanwhile, Shifeng promptly teleported to Star Moon City and went straight to the War God's temple there. Previously, the branch temple Lord Howard Ragewind had promised Shifeng that he would handle all of the necessary procedures for Zero Wing to garrison Star Moon Kingdom. Now that so much time had passed, the branch temple lord should be mostly done. Chapter 29 10 Kingdoms Foundation. When Shifeng entered the War God's Temple's first floor hall, a level 180, Tier 4 general manager approached him in a respectful manner. Upon seeing this sight, the players looking to pick up quests from the War God's Temple turned to Shifeng with envious and curious gazes. Who is that guy? Why is the general manager personally receiving him? I recall some Tier 4 experts coming to pick up quests some time ago. That general manager didn't bat an eye at them. Yet he's actually taking the initiative to welcome a player now. Could that guy be Black Flame? He must be Black Flame. I heard Black Flame always moves alone and loves concealing his identity. Out of all the players operating in Star Moon Kingdom, only Black Flame might get the general manager to treat him with such respect. Shortly after the players in the hall observed Shifeng's cloaked figure, passionate flames flared up in their eyes. They also began approaching him, hoping to take pictures or videos as mementos of meeting the legendary Sword Saint. After all, Black Flame was a living legend in the current God's domain. He was also the reason many new players had chosen to play the Swordsman class. In no time at all, posts with titles such as Sword Saint Black Flame appears in War God's Temple, and Sword Saint Black Flame seen in Star Moon City, began appearing on Star Moon Kingdom's official forums one after another. This situation rendered Shifeng speechless. He had initially used the Nightwalker's cape to conceal his identity. Nevertheless, these cunning players still managed to identify him almost immediately. Lord Sword Saint, the Temple Lord instructed me to give you this should you visit us, the general manager said respectfully as he proffered a rolled-up parchment. The contract's contents will take effect as soon as you sign it. After receiving the parchment scroll, Shifeng nodded and said, Please thank the Temple Lord for me. The contract the general manager handed Shifeng held the signature of Star Moon Kingdom's ruler. Once Shifeng signed his name on the contract, Zero Wing would officially garrison Star Moon Kingdom and become its representative guild. At that time, Zero Wing would be able to dictate the kingdom's development and even mobilize the kingdom's army. After reading the contract's contents, Shifeng signed it without hesitation. The sound of a system notification immediately entered his ears. System. Congratulations. Your guild, Zero Wing, has officially garrisoned Star Moon Kingdom and become the kingdom's representative guild. Zero Wing will now enjoy a portion of the kingdom's management rights. At the same time, a system announcement rang throughout Star Moon Kingdom. Star Moon Kingdom Region System Announcement. Congratulations to Zero Wing for officially garrisoning Star Moon Kingdom and becoming the kingdom's representative guild. Zero Wing will now enjoy a portion of the kingdom's management rights. The system announcement echoed in the minds of the Star Moon Kingdom's players 3 times, triggering an uproar among the kingdom's players. What's going on? Zero Wing garrisoned the kingdom? Didn't they say that only the reserve guilds of God's domain's 12 great guilds are qualified to garrison a country? The sudden system announcement confused many players. Zero Wing's members, though, were exhilarated, especially the guild's new members. After this announcement, even a fool would understand that Zero Wing now had the final say in everything inside Star Moon Kingdom. Now, even the superpowers wouldn't dare interfere in the kingdom's matters. With this development, Zero Wing's newcomers could not only grind without worry within the kingdom, but also gain access to numerous kingdom quests unavailable to other players. These kingdom quests would instantly resolve Zero Wing's concerns of developing its newcomers. Many of Star Moon Kingdom's player forces could already imagine Zero Wing's future rapid development. After all, now that Zero Wing had Star Moon Kingdom as a buffer, the guild could recruit new members without worrying about training resources. It wouldn't have to recruit only Tier 3 elite players and above. While elite players were indeed stronger than ordinary players, they made up only a small portion of God's Domain's player base. And with Zero Wing's current size, the guild might be able to defend its existing territory, but it would face great difficulty if it wanted to expand. However, this development resolved Zero Wing's weakness. Good. I finally did it. Shifeng smiled spontaneously when he saw the system notification. Immediately afterward, he left the War God's Temple and made his way to Star Moon Kingdom's national treasury. Guilds that garrisoned an entire kingdom or empire actually received a massive hidden benefit. Apart from the monthly tribute from the garrisoned country, representative guilds also gained access to the country's national treasury. A country's national treasury housed heirlooms that served as the country's foundation. And while players could exchange for these heirlooms using resources, they had to have the status of a Grand Duke in the country. Although Shifeng didn't have the status of a Grand Duke in Star Moon Kingdom, he had the status of an elder in the War God's Temple. In God's domain, an elder of the War God's Temple sat higher than even the Grand Dukes of empires. Shifeng naturally wouldn't have any problems exchanging for the heirlooms in a kingdom's national treasury. Meanwhile, royal heirlooms were far more valuable than what one could normally obtain through killing powerful monsters. They were items that could change the fate of an entire kingdom or empire. Hence, once a guild became a reserve guild of the 12 great guilds, dethroning it was incredibly difficult. In no time at all, Shifeng arrived at the palace and reached the treasury unhindered. It was no exaggeration to say that the national treasury was the safest location in the entire Star Moon Kingdom. 8 level 180, Tier 4 NPCs stood guard at the entrance alone. Moreover, these 8 NPCs were no ordinary NPCs. Although none of them wielded a legendary weapon, they were all clad in fragmented legendary set equipment. In terms of individual strength, these NPCs were more than capable of holding their ground against ordinary Tier 5 existences. Apart from these 8 NPCs, there was also a level 200, Tier 4 Knight Captain stationed inside the treasury. The Knight Captain sported a legendary chest plate, and his combat power had undoubtedly reached the Tier 5 threshold. Most importantly, a magic barrier enveloped the entire treasury. If one wished to break through this magic barrier, one would need a force of 3 to 5 Tier 5 existences at the very least. Lord Sword Saint, may I know what business you have here? The Knight Captain asked respectfully when Shifeng entered the treasury. I'm here to exchange for the items here, Shifeng stated. Please follow me. The Knight Captain then led Shifeng to the after descending 4 floors and walking for around half an hour. Shifeng arrived in front of a secret room enclosed by a magic barrier. Sitting quietly inside the room was an old man who made Shifeng feel pressured. A Tier 5 Grand Wizard? Shifeng was a little surprised when he saw the old man. Star Moon Kingdom's foundation was far stronger than he expected. After all, apart from being a Tier 5 existence, the old man in front of him also wore a legendary hat. Ordinary Tier 5 existences who tried to invade the treasury would only get roundly thrashed by this old man. Lord Sword Saint, please enter, the Knight Captain said while respectfully gesturing for Shifeng to enter the secret room. From the Knight Captain's actions, Shifeng guessed that the other party could go only as far as the secret room's entrance. After giving the Knight Captain a nod, Shifeng stepped into the room. Shifeng immediately noticed the room's uniqueness. The environment here resembled the ancient era's environment, which was already rare in the current God's domain. Lord Sword Saint, since you have already signed a contract with His Majesty, according to the contract, you are qualified to exchange for one of the items here, the old man said as he looked at Shifeng. He then waved his hand, summoning 3 items in front of Shifeng. The founding king left behind these 3 items. These items are why our Star Moon Kingdom was able to rise up in the main continent. I hope one of them can be of help to you. When Shifeng saw the 3 items before him, his eyes bulged immediately. This was because Star Moon Kingdom's foundation far exceeded Shifeng's expectations, so much so that he wondered how a kingdom could have such a powerful foundation. The 3 items before him were neither inferior divine artifact ranked items or legendary ranked items. Instead, they were 2 designs and 1 recipe, and any of them could influence even an empire's development. The first to enter Shifeng's eyes was the design for a mysterious iron flying ship, which was many times stronger than the Crimson Dragon flying ship, an advanced flying ship. Not only was it capable of going up against Tier 4 superior mythic monsters, but its strongest attack even reached the Tier 5 intermediate standard. It could tear through the defensive magic arrays of cities like paper. Moreover, it had a maximum carrying capacity of 300 people. However, it cost a mind-blowing 5 million gold coins and 1 million magic crystals to exchange for the mysterious iron flying ship's design. The second item that drew Shifeng's eyes was the recipe of the Divine Power Potion, a Grandmaster Potion. As the potion's name suggested, players would gain divine power when they consumed the potion. For half an hour, players would have their tier elevated by 1, up to a maximum of Tier 4. Although Shifeng had heard of potions that raised a player's tier by 1, he had never heard of any that could raise a player's tier to Tier 4. Moreover, the potion even had a long duration of 30 minutes. In the current era where Tier 4 players were still as rare as a phoenix's feather, the recipe for the Divine Power Potion was priceless. Even an ordinary first-rate guild would become an existence feared by the 5 great super guilds should it get its hands on this recipe. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Meanwhile, this recipe costs 1 million gold coins and 5 million magic crystals. The last item to enter Shifeng's eyes was the design for a combat puppet, a secret silver combat puppet. Throughout both his lives, Shifeng had seen a secret silver combat puppet only once. In God's domain, bronze combat puppets possess power at the Tier 3 peak standard. Even in the current God's domain, a bronze combat puppet was an incredibly powerful existence. Unless a Tier 4 existence appeared, a bronze combat puppet was unlikely to get destroyed. Above bronze combat puppets were mysterious iron combat puppets, which possess combat power at the Tier 4 peak standard. They could go toe-to-toe against bona fide Tier 4 players. As for secret silver combat puppets, they possess strength at the Tier 5 basic standard. Tier 4 existences would have a very difficult time destroying a secret silver combat puppet, and normally only Tier 5 existences could damage one. Meanwhile, the design for the secret silver combat puppet cost 2 million gold coins and 1 million magic crystals. Chapter 29:11 Heirlooms secured. Shifeng hesitated over the Star Moon Kingdom's 3 royal heirlooms. All 3 treasures could help a kingdom rise to prominence, and a guild to reach the apex of God's domain instantly. Moreover, each had its advantages. I can exchange for only one? Shifeng couldn't help asking. Only one, the old man replied with a smile. However, if you manage to help elevate Star Moon Kingdom into an empire, you are free to exchange for all 3. Promotion to an empire? Shifeng shook his head and smiled bitterly. While he knew of a few ways to get a kingdom promoted into an empire, none of these methods was easy to realize. They all needed a long time to accomplish. After thinking up to this point, Shifeng suddenly had an idea. He then asked the old man, "What if I offer to swap heirlooms?" Heirlooms could be categorized into royal heirlooms, imperial heirlooms, continental heirlooms, and world heirlooms. In the past, the players that had the fortune to come across an unidentified royal or imperial heirloom would do everything they could to find the fallen country the heirloom used to belong to. Since these heirlooms were treasures left behind by fallen kingdoms and empires, so long as one successfully identified the heirloom, one could use it to re-establish that kingdom or even empire. However, locating kingdoms and empires that had long since disappeared from God's domain wasn't easy. The endeavor rivaled a legendary quest in difficulty. Take Shifeng for example. Although he had found an imperial heirloom very early into the game, he still hadn't managed to find any clues to the empire the heirloom belonged to. However, this didn't particularly surprise him. After all, at this stage of the game, players had explored less than 20% of God's domain's maps. Indeed, even now, the players of God's domain had explored barely 15% of the world's maps. In God's domain, human kingdoms and empires occupied only a small portion of the world's territories. Most of the 2 main continents consisted of level 150+ neutral maps, and only after 40% of the game's player base reached level 180, Tier 3 or above could players adequately explore these maps. Not to mention, this was only the 2 main continents. There was still the vast ocean in God's domain, which held innumerable islands, some as large as kingdoms and empires. Hence, finding a fallen empire in God's domain was unbelievably difficult. This was why one of the top 10 rookie guilds in the past, which had acquired an unidentified imperial heirloom through an auction, had used this imperial heirloom to exchange for an identified royal heirloom from a kingdom. Afterward, the guild saw explosive growth and quickly became one of the reserve guilds of God's domain's 12 great guilds at the time. Although Shifeng wasn't sure how that guild had conducted the exchange, it would be a huge waste if he didn't ask if he could conduct a similar exchange. Swap heirlooms. The old man was a little stunned by Shifeng's question. After pondering for some time, he said, "That's possible, but are you willing to pay such a huge price?" "What is the price?" Shifeng asked. "Firstly, you'd need to find an unidentified imperial heirloom. Secondly, you'd need to pay double the price for a royal heirloom," the old man answered. "Double?" Shifeng was flabbergasted. A royal heirloom was by no means cheap, and all three of the royal heirlooms before him cost upwards of 1 million gold coins and 1 million magic crystals. If this price were doubled, even superpowers couldn't afford them. That's right. However, the most important part is still the imperial heirloom. Without it, it won't matter how many resources you offer, the old man said, nodding. "Deal. I'll trade an unidentified imperial heirloom for the mysterious iron-flying ship. I'll also use my exchange opportunity for the secret silver combat puppet," Shifeng said, gritting his teeth as he took out the imperial heirloom sitting inside his bag. Before visiting the royal treasury, he had already taken all the funds Zero Wing could spare. However, he only had a total of 5 million gold coins and 3 million magic crystals on him. After all, the recruitment of NPC soldiers and the construction of defensive structures in Ancient Rock City cost a lot of money and resources. Although Zero Wing City and Ancient Rock City were raking in a significant income now, it still wasn't enough to cover Ancient Rock City's development costs. "You actually have one." The old man was surprised to see the imperial heirloom in Shifeng's hands. "Yes, so hurry up with the exchange." Shifeng nodded with an aching heart. "All right. That will be 5 million gold coins and 3 million magic crystals in total," the old man said as he extended his hand to Shifeng. "Verify the amount," Shifeng said as he transferred the necessary amount of coins and magic crystals to the old man's spatial bag. After verifying that the amount was correct, the old man waved his hand, and 2 ancient designs flew to Shifeng. When Shifeng saw these 2 designs, his heart pounded with excitement. Although purchasing these 2 designs had nearly bankrupted him, their value was immeasurable. Now, all he needed to do was gather the necessary materials and begin mass production. The materials needed are certainly extraordinary. Even the most common of these materials is incredibly rare in the current God's domain. Producing both of these items will also require a ton of Titan gold and magic elven stones. Veins of Titan gold were considered grade 2 veins in God's domain and incredibly rare, but they were the only way players could acquire Titan gold in large quantities. Other types of grade 2 veins produce Titan gold only occasionally. Overall, Titan gold was super rare, and just 1 ingot could sell for over a dozen gold coins. As for the magic elven stone, acquiring it had given Shifeng a headache when he was planning to construct the Crimson Dragon flying ship. However, the Crimson Dragon flying ship's construction cost was nothing compared to the mysterious iron-ranked Blue Thunder flying ship. Even if he excluded the other materials required, just the 5,000 ingots of Titan gold and 600 magic elven stones required would already cost a fortune. As for the secret silver-ranked Flame Beast puppet, its construction required 1,000 ingots of Titan gold and 200 magic elven stones. Both items required magic elven stones in significant quantities to produce. Fortunately, when Yenya and Cleansing Whistle returned from the ancient era, they had brought back plenty of magic elven stones. Currently, Zero Wing had a stockpile of over 4,000 magic elven stones, just barely enough to construct an adequate number of Blue Thunder flying ships and Flame Beast puppets. The only problem now was the Titan gold. Zero Wing only had around 30,000 ingots. While Shifeng was studying the 2 designs, Feng Shihan suddenly called him. "Guild leader." The guild leaders and representatives of the Twin Towers Kingdom and Star Moon Kingdom's various player forces have arrived. However, hardly any guilds from the neighboring kingdoms showed up. Feng Shihan said in frustration. None of the 2 superpowers came, and only 3 of the 8 first-rate guilds showed up. As for second-rate guilds, they number less than 20. This attendance rate was abysmally low. The guilds that came to help from the several neighboring kingdoms were fewer than the guilds in Star Moon Kingdom. Not to mention, neither of the 2 superpowers decided to show up. Are they all waiting to jack up the price? Shifeng chuckled. He could understand the 2 superpowers' refusal. After all, the various superpowers had a lot of territories to cover, and they focused mainly on defending empires. However, there was no excuse for first- and second-rate guilds that weren't involved in the war to withhold their help. The only reason they decided not to show up at Zero Wing's war meeting had to be that they considered this a good opportunity to make a profit. If Zero Wing wished to get their help, then it would have to pay a price. Revealing a bitter smile, Feng Shihan said, "The first-rate guilds that aren't attending indeed have such an intention. In return for their full support, they are demanding the rights to purchase private houses and guild residences in Zero Wing City or Ancient Rock City. They say that the other superpowers have already promised them such conditions. However, if we agree to their demands, then they will choose to help our side instead." Shifeng's act of devastating the Outer Worlds player army with a single attack had indeed caused a huge sensation in God's domain. It had also prompted most of the superpowers targeting Zero Wing to abandon their ambitions. Many of the Twin Towers Kingdoms and Star Moon Kingdom's independent experts had even returned to help in the 2 kingdoms' defense. Most importantly, the number of players seeking to join Zero Wing had also skyrocketed. Unfortunately, all these changes still weren't enough to persuade the unengaged player forces to help Zero Wing. This was because the Outer Worlds NPC army was more formidable than the Outer Worlds player army. There were multiple Tier 5 NPCs in the NPC army, and the upcoming battlefield would span a significant portion of the Twin Towers Kingdom's border. All sorts of siege battles and guerrilla warfare would take place, and there was no way Shifeng could be present for every one of these fights. Moreover, the NPC army on the Twin Towers Kingdom and Star Moon Kingdom side was significantly weaker than the Outer Worlds NPC army. Because of mythology and solar temples interference, the neighboring kingdoms uninvolved in the war didn't send their armies to reinforce the Twin Towers Kingdom and Star Moon Kingdom, but to other kingdoms and empires. Hence, the NPC army defending the Twin Towers Kingdom consisted of the NPCs of only the 2 kingdoms. Although the Outer Worlds NPC army had split up into several dozen smaller groups, and the detachment marching toward the Twin Towers Kingdom didn't have player support, this detachment could still put the 2 kingdoms' joint army through hell. Hence, a large number of players was needed to fight the Outer Worlds NPCs. And realizing this fact, the neighboring kingdoms' first-rate guilds naturally wouldn't miss the opportunity to get a cut of Zero Wing's resources. Good. Very good. Shifeng smiled when he heard Feng Shihan's words. Tell those first-rate guilds that they can come if they want. But if they don't, then they can forget about coming to us in the future. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Who this? Shifeng's reply rendered Feng Shihan momentarily speechless. If she relayed Shifeng's words to those 5 first-rate guilds, it would be no different from severing all ties between Zero Wing and these first-rate guilds. Meanwhile, the War of Worlds wouldn't end in just one day. As both sides continuously grew stronger and more numerous, it would end up a war of attrition between God's domain and the outer world. If Zero Wing rejected the help of these guilds now, it would have much more difficulty finding helpers in the future. After all, battles were taking place all over the eastern continent, and everywhere was lacking in manpower. It was also why the superpowers tolerated the various first- and second-rate guilds' absurd demands. Otherwise, the superpowers would have long since dealt with these large guilds. Shifeng naturally understood what Feng Shihan was trying to say. He waved the 2 designs in his hand and smiled, saying, "Look what I have here." Chapter 29:12. Confidence. When Shifeng took out 2 old and tattered designs, Feng Shihan initially discounted them. She still thought that his decision was too rash. While the 5 first-rate guilds in question might not have as many peak experts as the various superpowers, they still had over 300,000 Tier 3 players under their command, with some even having 400,000. Such a large force of Tier 3 players could influence the Twin Towers Kingdom's defensive battle significantly. Even the current Zero Wing only had around 1.2 million Tier 3 players, just the average for a superpower. However, after Feng Shihan took a look at the text on the designs, she immediately fell into a daze. Guild leader, are you playing a trick on me? Feng Shihan couldn't help asking. She had seen many treasures during her time in mythology. However, no matter how she looked at the designs for the Blue Thunder flying ship and Flame Beast puppet, she still felt as if she was dreaming. At this stage of the game, the 5 great super guilds had already acquired their own flying ships. However, those were only basic flying ships, which were significantly inferior to the Crimson flying ship, let alone the Blue Thunder flying ship. As for combat puppets, as far as she knew, mythology's strongest combat puppets were 3 mysterious iron combat puppets, which were used to safeguard mythology's main headquarters. Mythology had even tasked Tier 4 NPCs to keep a constant watch on these war weapons to prevent theft. Do you think I need to do that? Shifeng chuckled when he saw Feng Shihan's skeptical look. He could understand Feng Shihan's doubts. Mysterious iron flying ships and secret silver combat puppets shouldn't be available to players at this stage of the game, let alone the designs for them. With these designs, so long as Zero Wing had sufficient materials, it could produce a plethora of these war weapons. And with the power of these war weapons, Zero Wing could devastate the entire continent. Sure. I'll go and reject those guilds now, Feng Shihan said, smiling. A hint of excitement also gleamed in her eyes. Although she had already grown accustomed to holding a powerful identity and position during her time as one of mythology's vice guild leaders, her heart still swelled with excitement and expectations. If Zero Wing could produce the Blue Thunder flying ship and Flame Beast puppet in time, it was almost certain to win the upcoming defensive battle at the Twin Towers Kingdom. Afterward, the 5 first-rate guilds and numerous second-rate guilds peacefully developing in the kingdoms neighboring the Twin Towers Kingdom received Feng Shihan's overbearing response. Feng Shihan did not embellish her message with any redundant words. Instead, her reply contained only one word: scram. The 5 first-rate guilds and many second-rate guilds were dumbfounded upon seeing this response. What arrogance! Zero Wing is simply too arrogant. Zero Wing isn't taking our 5 guilds seriously at all. When the guild leaders of the 5 first-rate guilds, who had gathered for a meeting, saw Feng Shihan's reply, they unanimously jumped out of their seats and cursed in anger. Before the War of Worlds began, the superpowers held incredibly powerful influence over God's domain, such that first-rate guilds like theirs could only bear with the injustice and live with their heads down. However, after the Outer Worlds NPC army invaded, the Eastern Continent's superpowers had no choice but to beg the first-rate guilds for help to defend their territories and routes. Yet despite facing imminent danger, Zero Wing actually dared tell their 5 guilds to scram. Zero Wing was simply tired of living. If Zero Wing wants to be arrogant, let it, the guild leader of Holy Seal sneered as he read Feng Shihan's reply. Once the battle at the Twin Towers Kingdom begins, we'll see how Zero Wing continues behaving arrogantly when it lacks manpower. That's right. Since Zero Wing looks down on us, we'll just help other superpowers. Zero Wing will live to regret its decision today, the guild leader of another first-rate guild said, nodding. If Zero Wing asks us for help later on, it won't get such a good price from us again. Many superpowers had already sent representatives to deliver invitations to their 5 first-rate guilds. Among them, Starlink's offer was particularly generous. Their 5 guilds had no need to worry about finding a superpower to employ them for their services. Their 5 first-rate guilds combined could field a massive army of 1.6 million Tier 3 players and 64 Tier 4 players. Apart from peak experts and apex experts, the alliance of their 5 guilds was not the slightest bit weaker than the average superpower. This was the basis of their confidence. Once their 5 guilds went to aid Starlink and Starlink's side repelled the Outer Worlds NPC army, Zero Wing would definitely regret rejecting their offer. And once Zero Wing came begging them for help, they would thoroughly bleed the guild for every penny it had. The other 3 guild leaders nodded in agreement, wanting Zero Wing to taste the misery of defending the Twin Towers Kingdom without their 5 guilds. Following this, the 5 first-rate guilds collaborated with the uncommitted second-rate guilds and accepted Starlink's invitation to join the Dark Knight Empire's defensive line. This sudden development caught even Lu Tiandi off guard momentarily. Young Master, what do you think is going through Black Flame's mind? Ikue asked curiously as he looked at the signed contracts he just received. The combined force of these 5 first-rate guilds is by no means weak, and even the super guilds over at the Fire Dragon Empire have eagerly sought their help. With how much these 5 guilds covet Zero Wing City and Ancient Rock City, even if Zero Wing allots only a small portion of those 2 cities' shares to them, these 5 guilds would probably agree to help Zero Wing. Yet now, Black Flame is just too prideful. He thinks that just because he is a Tier 5 Sword Saint in God's Domain's strongest player, he doesn't need to fear the Outer World's NPC army, Lu Qiandi said nonchalantly. He doesn't know just how powerful the NPC army is. Once the real battle begins, even Tier 5 players will be nothing but a joke. If it were before Lu Qiandi had clashed with the Outer World's NPC army, he would have considered Shifeng's decision unwise but understandable. After all, Tier 5 players were many times stronger than Tier 4 players. It wouldn't even be surprising to see a Tier 5 player single-handedly destroy a city. However, after experiencing the Dark Knight Empire's defensive battle against the Outer World's NPC army, Lu Qiandi now understood that while Tier 5 NPCs were indeed powerful, they weren't invincible. This was especially true in battlefields that involved war weapons and Tier 4 NPCs using battle arrays. Every targeted city in the Dark Knight Empire would face at least 10 battle arrays formed by Tier 4 NPCs, and around 500 Tier 4 NPCs. Even if a superpower dispatched all its Tier 4 players, it wouldn't be able to do a thing against such a force. Not to mention, Zero Wing was going to defend an entire kingdom by itself, so there was no way it could afford to concentrate all its Tier 4 players in one battlefield. Moreover, unlike the previous War of Worlds, the Outer World's NPC army had many more Tier 5 NPCs in its ranks this time. Just one Tier 5 player couldn't do anything against the Outer World's NPC army. A large number of Tier 3 and Tier 4 players was necessary to whittle down the NPC army and achieve victory. Otherwise, the Outer World's NPC army would simply trample over the Twin Towers Kingdom cities and fortresses. But this is good for us. If not for Black Flame's arrogance, these 5 first-rate guilds wouldn't have joined us, Lu Qiandi said, smiling. Starlink wasn't the only superpower defending the Dark Knight Empire. There were also Crimson Emperor and Unyielding Soul. Only, the 3 guilds were separately defending their respective territories. If Crimson Emperor and Unyielding Soul failed to defend the NPC cities and fortresses they operated, both guilds would suffer a major setback. After all, both guilds had their headquarters in the Dark Knight Empire. However, while the Eastern Continent's various superpowers were discussing Zero Wing's unwise decision, Zero Wing continued operating as usual. The guild frenziedly recruited God's Domain's newcomers and sequentially developed Zero Wing City and Ancient Rock City. It also relied on the Tier 3 legacies from the Secret Covenant Tower to steadily increase its Tier 3 population. The 5 first-rate guilds' partnership with Starlink did not affect Zero Wing's operations at all. On the contrary, the number of independent experts coming to help defend the Twin Towers Kingdom even skyrocketed. This was because after Zero Wing garrisoned Starmoon Kingdom, Starmoon Kingdom's NPC cities established direct teleportation links to Zero Wing's guild cities. This was a great convenience for players seeking to travel to Zero Wing's guild cities. The ability to teleport straight to Ancient Rock City was especially welcomed by players seeking to explore and raid the Orc capital city. Because of the popularity of this new teleportation service, Feng Shirhan created a bounty system for Outer World NPCs. Under this bounty system, players would receive 5 points for killing a Tier 3 NPC, 500 points for killing a Tier 4 NPC, and 100,000 points for killing a Tier 5 NPC. Players would also receive ranks according to the points they accumulated. Players that accumulated 100,000 bounty points would receive the bronze rank, which would entitle them to a lifetime discount of 5% on entrance fees and accommodation fees for all of Zero Wing's guild cities. At 1 million points, players would receive the silver rank and enjoy a 10% discount. At 10 million points, players would receive the gold rank and enjoy a 20% discount. After the announcement of this bounty system, over 1 million Tier 3 independent experts and 200 Tier 4 independent experts flooded into the Twin Towers Kingdom's border cities and fortresses from other kingdoms in just one day. All of them sought to accumulate Zero Wing's bounty points to reduce their expenditure in Ancient Rock City and Zero Wing City. The various superpowers grew envious over this situation, and promptly adopted Zero Wing's ranking system. Only, the results weren't as effective. While independent players were flooding the Twin Towers kingdom, Shurfeng gathered the candlelight trading firm's elites and began frantically researching, then manufacturing the Blue Thunder flying ship and Flame Beast puppet. Manufacturing these two war weapons didn't require just precious materials but also high-level forging techniques, alchemy techniques, enchanting techniques, and knowledge of magic arrays. Grandmaster-level lifestyle players had to take charge of the process. The Blue Thunder flying ship, in particular, required the cooperation of 3 Grandmaster forgers. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU and the current God's domain, only the candlelight trading firm could provide such manpower. Even after researching for an entire day, Shurfeng and the others only managed to scratch the surface of the design. It would take several more days to construct a Blue Thunder flying ship. On the other hand, to Shurfeng's joy, both Gentle Snow and Aqua Rose finally made a full recovery. Apart from losing some of their combat memories and having their combat standards weakened slightly, they experienced no other side effects after taking life water. Moreover, the two of them also succeeded in creating their Tier 5 mana bodies and got promoted to Tier 5. This increased Zero Wing's overall combat power by a large margin. On the 5th day, Shurfeng and Candlelight's members were working on the Blue Thunder flying ship. Feng Shirhan, who was responsible for the Twin Towers Kingdom's defensive preparations, suddenly contacted Shurfeng guild leader. The Outer World's NPC army has started moving. Chapter 29 13 Blue Thunder flying ship. An army of more than 10 million NPCs? Shurfeng was a little shocked when he read the detailed report Feng Shirhan sent him. He had experienced wars between kingdoms and empires in his previous life. However, the kingdoms involved had pitted armies of 1 million NPCs, at most, against each other. These wars had also typically lasted over a month, as the involved kingdoms conducted all sorts of battles to annex each other's land. This was because one of the conditions for a kingdom to become an empire was occupying a sufficiently large area of land. In the case of wars between empires, even if two empires waged a full-blown war with each other, the total number of NPCs participating would reach only 10 million. Yet, just one of the Otherworld NPC army's several dozen detachments had a force of 10 million NPCs, equivalent to the combatants of two empires combined. At their rate of advance, they will reach the Steel Lion Fortress, which is the closest to the border, in 2 hours. Fire Dance and I are on our way there with 800,000 Tier 3 players and 50 Tier 4 players. We should arrive within an hour. As for the 2 other targeted locations, Aqua Rose has garrisoned Thunder Gorge City with 700,000 Tier 3 players and 70 Tier 4 players, while Gentle Snow has garrisoned the Redthorn Fortress with 1 million Tier 3 players and 100 Tier 4 players. As for the independent players, they will probably make their way to these 3 locations soon. The good news is that, according to our investigations, not many Outer World players are joining the battlefield here, so we shouldn't face as much trouble as the various empires. We only need to focus on the NPC army. Border strongholds generally only had small teleportation arrays, which limited the number of players that could get through. Hence, Feng Shirhan could only have everyone hurry over to these strongholds on foot, when faced with the Outer World NPC army's sudden invasion. Shurfeng understood their current predicament. Unlike NPCs, players couldn't stay cooped up in a border stronghold forever. They needed to grind for levels and better equipment. Hence, in preparation for the imminent war, most players had chosen to bind their return point to the NPC cities located closest to the border strongholds. Only when the actual war began would they teleport to these NPC cities and travel to the border strongholds on their mounts. I'll leave command to you all for now, but I'll hurry over to help afterward, Shurfeng said. 1 hour. With his speed, he could definitely make it to the Steel Lion Fortress within an hour. Currently, the only thing the Blue Thunder flying ship lacked was the core magic array. So long as he finished engraving it, the mysterious iron flying ship would be complete. A mysterious iron flying ship could play a significant role in a defensive siege. Its importance even surpassed 2 or 3 ordinary Tier 5 existences. After Shurfeng finished speaking, he promptly disconnected the call and began engraving the core magic array. The core magic array comprised 3 advanced Grandmaster magic arrays. These magic arrays were so complex that even a basic Grandmaster magician, wouldn't be able to construct them. This feat should also be beyond Shifeng, who had gotten promoted to Grandmaster Magician just recently. However, after his concentration standard reached the Tier 5 peak rank, his brain's activity and computing power had improved drastically. In addition, the core array's 3 advanced Grandmaster magic arrays shared some similarities with some of the magic arrays passed down through the ancient gods' legacy. These factors made it possible for Shifeng to carve out the 3 advanced Grandmaster magic arrays. The past 3 failures occurred because of a mistake in the final fusion process. With my degree of control, the magic arrays carved should be perfect, so why can't I merge them? Is my control of magic arrays insufficient? Or is there another problem? Confusion filled Shifeng's mind as he repeatedly inspected the core magic array's design. He had already succeeded in engraving the core magic array without pausing, yet he failed to activate the magic array when he tried injecting mana into it. This was definitely the first time he had encountered such a problem. Typically, if players succeeded in engraving a magic array, the magic array would activate once it received a supply of mana. Only if there was a problem with the magic array would the activation fail. Guild leader, I keep getting the feeling that this core magic array is very strange, Melancholic Smile suddenly said as she looked at the core magic array. Each of the 3 magic arrays in it is meant to absorb one specific type of mana. So why are they forcing these 3 types of mana to fuse afterward? The 3 elements have their own characteristics. How could they be merged into one? Currently, Melancholic Smile was only half a step away from becoming a Grandmaster Magician. And because she didn't invest her time in combat, the amount of research she conducted into Grandmaster magic arrays surpassed even Shifeng's. When she first looked at the Blue Thunder flying ship's core magic array, she already found the magic array strange. However, since the flying ship's design stated that the magic array should be constructed that way, she didn't voice her concerns. Now that the core magic array couldn't be activated, though, this proved that there was indeed a flaw in the design. However, Shifeng simply smiled when he heard Melancholic Smile's questions. The various elements of mana indeed have their own operating principles, and merging them is impossible. However, that's not the case for this extraordinary magic array. After absorbing ambient mana, the magic array will first break up the operations of these different types of mana, and before they recover, the magic array will influence them to operate under a new set of operating principles. Although the change will last for only a brief moment, the core magic array can, without a doubt, change the operating principles of mana. Something like that is possible. Melancholic Smile was startled. In her opinion, the operating principles of mana were unchangeable. Take the way some players forcefully manipulated mana to use skills. While these players might succeed in activating their skills, the result would have significantly weaker effects. After all, the mana they manipulated was actively resisting them. For this reason, players who had reached Tier 4 would try to activate their skills and spells by following the operating principles of mana instead of forcing mana to do their bidding. As Shifeng was about to explain further, he suddenly fell into a daze. I see. So this is the law of destruction's true usage method. An ecstatic expression appeared on Shifeng's face as realization dawned upon him. Recently, he had fallen into despair, as he found himself stuck at Holy Annihilation's entry level. No matter how he tried to convert ambient mana into his own mana, the area he could influence only grew alongside his concentration. While this was indeed the correct way to manipulate mana, it wasn't the case if he was trying to make use of a world law. The reason Holy Annihilation could exhibit such devastating power was a complex destruction magic array, designed for the mana technique. The fact that he could utilize the Heavenly Blue Saint's destruction magic array and merge it into various combat techniques and mana manipulation methods proved that he was starting to master the law of destruction. However, he still didn't truly understand how the destruction magic array operated. But Shifeng understood everything now. The law of destruction's essence wasn't to make mana disappear. Instead, it was to break the operating principles of mana, causing mana to lose its original effects. Hence, if he wished to grasp the law of destruction fully, he shouldn't be relying on the destruction magic array to guide mana. Instead, he should rely on his mind to halt the operations of mana naturally. Of course, it was easier said than done. Not only did he need powerful mental strength, but he also had to reverse the operations of different types of mana precisely. Only by doing so could he perfectly stop the operation of mana. At this point, Shifeng finally understood why the core magic array wouldn't activate. So, it is because the strength of my mana is too weak? Shifeng smiled bitterly as he looked at the engraved magic array in front of him. Mana was required to control mana. If a person lacked mana, they naturally couldn't manipulate ambient mana. If one wished to break the operating principles of mana, one would need incredibly powerful mana. Liquid mana wouldn't suffice. One would need solid mana at the very least. Shifeng immediately began concentrating all of the mana within his body, condensing it into a grain of sand that sat on his palm. He then injected the grain of solid mana into the core magic array. Boom! Along with the sound of an explosion, the blue thunder flying ship's core magic array came to life. The ambient mana surrounding the flying ship then began flooding the core magic array, becoming fuel for the flying ship's engine. System. Congratulations! You have successfully created the blue thunder flying ship. Forging proficiency increased by 100 million points. Level increased by 2. Simultaneously, all players who participated in the Blue Thunder flying ship's production received a corresponding amount of EXP and proficiency. Although the amount they received wasn't as exaggerated as Shifeng's, it was still significant nonetheless. Currently, though, nobody paid attention to the reward they just received. Instead, their eyes were all glued to the completed Blue Thunder flying ship. The Blue Thunder flying ship measured 500 meters from stem to stern, and it could carry up to 300 players at a time. It boasted 40 advanced magic elven cannons, each capable of launching attacks at the Tier 5 basic standard, and 12 floating crystal cannons, which could be used for both offense and defense. Offensively, the floating crystal cannons could launch attacks at the Tier 5 basic standard. Defensively, they could withstand attacks even from Tier 5 existences. In addition to these two types of cannons, the flying ship also had a main cannon capable of launching attacks at the Tier 5 intermediate standard. Lastly, the flying ship's flight speed was comparable to that of Tier 5 extraordinary flying mounts. Twin Towers Kingdom, Steel Lion Fortress. Assembled atop the Steel Lion Fortress's 50-meter-tall steel walls were more than 300,000 level 150-plus, Tier 3 NPCs, all geared in level 150-plus dark gold equipment. These NPCs were without a doubt the cream of the crop of the Twin Towers Kingdom's army. There were also close to 30 Tier 4 NPCs standing on the wall, and the one leading these Tier 4 NPCs was a level 200 Tier 4 Sky Knight. The Sky Knight was a man who appeared to be in his late 50s, clad in a complete set of fragmented legendary set equipment. The aura he exuded was comparable to that of an ordinary Tier 5 NPC. Apart from the fortress walls, there were also 24 Tier 4 NPCs chanting an incantation inside the fortress's core control room. Because of these magical class NPCs' manipulation, the fortress's defensive magic array, which used to have only one layer, was now a threefold magic array instead. Even a Tier 5 existence on a rampage wouldn't be able to destroy it. At most, the other party would merely expend some of the fortress's energy supply. A total of 30 magic cannon towers rose above the fortress, and more than 600 large destruction ballistas were set up on the fortress walls. In the sky, 10 flying ships hovered over the fortress, 9 advanced rank and 1 bronze rank. Alongside these flying ships were over 100 Tier 3 and Tier 4 flying mounts. The sight was simply spectacular and absolutely not something anyone would get to see very often. More than 2 million players gathered in the fortress, making the Steel Lion Fortress incredibly crowded. At this moment, though, none of the players inside the Steel Lion Fortress felt relaxed or excited. This was because some distance from the Steel Lion Fortress was an army of over 3 million NPCs, and the number of Tier 4 NPCs in that army exceeded 500. It came bearing various siege weapons, large catapults, and advanced mana pulse cannons, which easily numbered more than 1,000. Meanwhile, hovering above this outerworld NPC army were more than 50 flying ships. 6 of them were bronze flying ships while the rest were advanced flying ships. In combination with the 500-plus Tier 3 and Tier 4 flying mounts, they practically blotted out the entire sky. The disparity in combat power between the two sides was clear for all to see. Even the players who came to spectate and conduct a live broadcast of the battle wore gloomy expressions when they saw the Outer Worlds NPC army. On the Twin Towers Kingdom's forums, the live broadcast caused an uproar among the Kingdom's players. Is this the Outer World's real strength? Can we really hold the Twin Towers Kingdom? Although many of the Twin Towers Kingdoms players had heard bits of information regarding the battles that had taken place at the various empires, the most they got were rumors and some pictures. They didn't have a clear understanding of the Outer World NPC army's true might. Moreover, as players of another country, they previously considered these battles none of their business. However, after seeing the army outside the Steel Lion Fortress, they felt an indescribable sense of despair. The players standing inside the Steel Lion Fortress especially understood what a war between kingdoms and a war of worlds entailed. Battles between players were nothing compared to a war between worlds. The next moment, amid the anxiety and despair of the Twin Towers Kingdoms players, the commander of the Outer Worlds NPC army raised his right hand and swung it forward. Following his actions, both the war weapons on the ground and the flying ships and flying mounts in the sky began advancing. Activate all defenses. Everyone prepare for battle. The Steel Lion Fortress's commander, Sky Knight Seppel, shouted as he raised his longsword. In response to Seppel's command, the NPCs within the fortress armed the magic cannon towers and large destruction ballistas, knocked their bows and chanted incantations. Shortly afterward, the first exchange between the two sides took place. The sky instantly turned into a sea of flames as explosions of varying degrees shook the sky and the ground. The explosions were so deafening that all of the players inside the fortress felt their heads ring. After taking a look at the burning battlefield, Feng Shirhan, who stood atop the fortress wall, turned to the players below the wall. Using a voice amplification spell, she ordered calmly, "Everyone, don't panic. Move as we've planned. Ranged players head up the walls. Melee players, move to the agreed-upon defensive points. Once the magic barrier breaks, it will be your turn to attack with everything you've got. We must prevent the Outer Worlds NPCs from destroying the core magic array at all costs until the magic barrier recovers. So long as we can hold our ground, those Outer World NPCs will be forced to retreat sooner or later." The fortress's defensive magic array wasn't invincible. In the face of such a powerful offensive, it was only a matter of time before it shattered. Meanwhile, what players like themselves needed to do during this battle was protect the fortress's core magic array, while the defensive magic array was down, and buy as much time as possible until the defensive magic array came back online. They would also try to kill as many Outer World NPCs as possible during this time. Once they repeated this cycle a few times, the Outer Worlds NPC army would eventually have to retreat. When Feng Shirhan finished speaking, many of the players present calmed down, and confidence rekindled in their hearts. NPCs had a very difficult time getting resurrected, and even more so in an intense battle like this. However, it was a different story for players like themselves. If they died, they could be resurrected quickly and rejoin the battle. If there was a healer nearby, they could even be resurrected on the spot at the cost of some EXP. However, 3 minutes after Feng Shirhan finished speaking, the sound of glass shattering entered everyone's ears. This sound originated from none other than the Steel Lion Fortress's defensive magic array. "Vanguard! Charge!" The Outer World Army's commander commanded. Immediately, the Outer World's Tier 3 NPCs began charging toward the Steel Lion Fortress in a frenzy. As for the Outer World's Tier 4 NPCs, they flew straight for the Fortress Lord's mansion, attracting the Steel Lion Fortress's Tier 4 NPCs to intercept them. "Trap those Tier 4 NPCs with magic barriers," Feng Shirhan hurriedly commanded when she saw the hundreds of Tier 4 NPCs and flying mounts heading into the fortress. "All melee players, stop those Tier 3 NPCs from entering the fortress." At Feng Shirhan's command, Zero Wings members promptly deployed the master magic barriers they had prepared, trapping more than half of the Outer World NPCs and flying mounts and isolating them into over a dozen different combat zones. Immediately afterward, the Tier 4 players cooperated with the fortress's Tier 4 NPCs to engage the Outer World's Tier 4 NPCs and flying mounts. As for the Tier 3 melee players, they cooperated with the fortress's Tier 3 NPCs to stop the Outer World's Tier 3 NPCs outside the wall. For a time, sounds of battle rang out from all over the Silver Lion Fortress, originating from individual battles, group battles, and one-sided slaughters. On the ground, the fortress's Tier 3 players were holding up pretty well against the Outer World's Tier 3 NPCs. Although there was indeed a difference in levels and equipment between the two sides, The Tier 3 players managed to mitigate this difference by relying on their superior combat standards and coordination with other players. The difference in numbers between the two sides wasn't overwhelming either. So the Fortress's Tier 3 players managed to trade at a relatively good ratio of 2-to-8 with the Outer Worlds Tier 3 NPCs, with 2 Outer World NPCs dying for every 8 Fortress players. This was undoubtedly a beneficial outcome for the players. However, in the aerial battle, the Twin Towers Kingdom's side had fallen into an absolute disadvantage. Setting aside the difference in the number of flying ships and flying mounts the two sides possessed, just the difference in the number of Tier 4 combatants already posed an insurmountable gap. And worse, the Fortress's magic cannon towers were hardly of any use against the Outer World's Tier 4 combatants. Moreover, if not for Fire Dance, Violet Cloud, and Yin Tianqing working together to hold off the leader of the Outer World Army's vanguard, a level 180 Tier 5 NPC, the advanced master barriers trapping and suppressing more than half of the Outer World's Tier 4 NPCs would have long since been shattered. As for the other Tier 4 experts, apart from those at the Void Realm standard or above, everyone else couldn't even put up a fight against the Outer World's Tier 4 NPCs. The difference in the number of Tier 4 combatants is too great. No wonder the superpowers in the empires are losing fights one after another. At this rate, it won't take more than 10 minutes before the core magic array is destroyed. After killing a level 180 Tier 4 Great Wizard, Feng Shihan glanced at Kola and White Feather, who were doing their best to stop attacks from reaching the Fortress Lord's mansion. When she saw they faced a dozen or so Tier 4 NPCs, she felt powerless. On her side, she only had to handle 3 level 180 Tier 4 NPCs by herself, so she could more or less cope. As for Kola and White Feather, they might not have any problem holding off a dozen or so Tier 4 NPCs by relying on their skills and techniques for now, but that would remain true only while they had skills to use. Not to mention, this wasn't all the Outer World Army had to offer. It had over 500 Tier 4 NPCs in total and even Tier 5 NPCs leading it. The disparity between the Twin Towers Kingdom's army and the Outer World's army was utterly demoralizing. After some more time passed, 8 of the Twin Towers Kingdom's Tier 4 NPCs and more than 20 Tier 4 players fell. In contrast, the Outer World army lost only 6 Tier 4 NPCs, 3 of which were Feng Shihan's kills. The stark difference between the two sides plunged the Tier 4 players into despair. "Keep fighting. We must not retreat on our first battle," Feng Shihan bellowed when she saw her people's demoralized expressions. "Even if we die, we must make these Outer World NPCs pay a sufficient price." Feng Shihan wasn't too surprised that the Steel Iron Fortress's defenses were crumbling. The disparity between the Outer World's army and the Twin Towers Kingdom's army was simply too immense. The only way the Twin Towers Kingdom could emerge victorious was by whittling down the Outer World's army through multiple battles at multiple strongholds. However, the first battle was also when the Twin Towers Kingdom's combat power was at its peak. If the Twin Towers Kingdom failed to deplete a significant portion of the Outer World's army's forces, the subsequent battles would be even more difficult. As soon as Feng Shihan finished speaking, however, the Outer World army's commander, who rode on one of the bronze flying ships, stood up and suddenly released a frightening aura that enveloped the Steel Lion Fortress. Upon coming into contact with this aura, all the players within the fortress felt their heartbeats accelerate and their bodies grow heavier. It was evident that the Outer World army's commander no longer intended to watch from the sidelines and would now enter the battlefield. A level 200 Tier 5 Holy Grail Knight? A solemn expression appeared on Feng Shihan's face when she saw the enemy commander walking step by step in the air. The aura the enemy commander radiated was significantly stronger than what the enemy's vanguard leader radiated. Moreover, he even wielded a legendary greatsword. The enemy commander probably stood at the top even among Tier 5 existences. If the Steel Lion Fortress's defenders had to clash against such an existence, their defensive line would probably crumble in an instant. When the other players saw the enemy commander taking the field himself, none of them had any doubts that this siege battle was over. However, just as the enemy Holy Grail Knight arrived above the Steel Lion Fortress and was about to take action, a deafening roar suddenly came from the distant sky. Before anyone could turn toward the source of the noise, a dark blue behemoth arrived in the airspace above the fortress like a lightning bolt. Both players and NPCs present were startled by the dark blue behemoth's sudden appearance. A flying ship? Is that really a flying ship? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The flying ship above them was simply massive. Even the bronze flying ships, which measured close to 200 meters in length, looked like infants beside the dark blue behemoth. Moreover, this dark blue behemoth distorted the space around it just by hovering in place. The mana within and around the Steel Lion Fortress gathered fervently around this dark blue behemoth, and even the Outer World Army's vanguard commander had the mana in his mana domain drawn away. As the dark blue behemoth began descending toward the fortress, a man wearing a black cloak walked to the bow of the flying ship. Upon seeing this man, the players in the fortress immediately burst into cheers. "Guild leader, you're finally here," Feng Shihan said in a disgruntled tone as she looked at the man standing atop the dark blue behemoth. Shifeng had promised to arrive at the Steel Lion Fortress before the battle began, yet he showed up only after they had been fighting for some time. "Sorry for the long wait, everyone," Shifeng said apologetically as he looked at Feng Shihan and the others. He then shifted his gaze to the Outer World NPC army and smiled, saying, "Now that I'm here, leave the rest to me." Chapter 29:14 Law Technique? Upon hearing Shifeng's words, Fire Dance, Kola, Violet Cloud, Yen Tianxing, and the other longtime members of Zero Wing felt an indescribable sense of relief and excitement. "Guild leader, our situation is terrible. The enemy's air power is too strong," Feng Shihan said in a helpless tone as she pointed at the enemy's Tier 5 commander and the 30-plus flying ships. "The fortress's defensive magic array still needs more than 10 minutes to recover. I'm afraid we won't last that long." Although Shifeng's arrival meant that they had someone to hold back the enemy commander, they still had to contend with hundreds of Tier 4 NPCs and flying mounts, when their side had less than 100 Tier 4 combatants. Although they had the fortress's magic array support, which mitigated the effects of the Tier 5 NPCs' mana domains and suppressed the enemy Tier 4 NPCs, they were still at an absolute disadvantage. Not to mention the Steel Lion Fortress's commander, the level 200 Tier 4 Sky Knight Sepul, currently had less than 50% of his HP remaining. If not for the many Tier 3 and Tier 4 healers supporting him, he would have long since fallen to the 20-plus level 180 Tier 4 NPCs ganging up on him. "Relax." After looking at Feng Shihan, Shifeng turned to the Blue Thunder flying ship and smiled, saying, "If it's air power, we don't lack any either." "We don't lack any?" Feng Shihan glanced at the Blue Thunder flying ship and then turned to survey the enemy's fleet of flying ships, her worries not easing in the slightest. Naturally, she knew that a mysterious iron flying ship was powerful, and that it could go up against Tier 5 combatants. However, the enemy's Tier 5 combatants were by no means weak. Moreover, several dozen Tier 4 NPCs had constructed a summoning array some distance behind the enemy's commander. A monster summoned by several dozen Tier 4 NPCs definitely wouldn't be weak. There was even a high possibility it would be a Tier 5 legendary monster. No sooner had Feng Shihan finished speaking than those several dozen Tier 4 NPCs completed their incantations. A gigantic bone dragon then emerged from the summoning array, its 500-meter-long body matching the Blue Thunder flying ship in size. The bone dragon also had a wingspan of 1,000 meters. When this bone dragon appeared and let loose a roar, the intense shockwave it generated made all the Tier 3 combatants on the battlefield feel lightheaded. Ancient Bone Dragon. Undead, Legendary. Level 180 HP 200 billion. Upon seeing the Ancient Bone Dragon's statistics, the players inside the Steel Lion Fortress gasped reflexively. Even the players spectating the battle through the Twin Towers Kingdom's forums were dumbfounded, many people spitting out the drink in their mouth. This was the first time any of the Twin Towers Kingdom's players saw a legendary monster's statistics, and they all couldn't help despairing. Even the Tier 4 players in the fortress revealed a bitter smile. Setting aside the wide-range attacks the Bone Dragon could execute with its massive body, just its 200 billion HP was more than enough to make any Tier 4 player lose hope. After all, the Ancient Bone Dragon could recover 2% of its HP every 5 seconds due to its battle recovery. In other words, it could regenerate 4 billion HP every 5 seconds. Combined with its Tier 5 defense, even 100 Tier 4 players attacking with everything they had wouldn't be enough to kill it. "It's over. We're dead for sure this time." Many of the Tier 3 players in the Steel Lion Fortress lost their fighting spirit as they looked at the Ancient Bone Dragon in the sky. Shi Feng's arrival was indeed a huge help to them. However, along with his arrival, the enemy forces had become even stronger. Although Shi Feng was a Tier 5 Sword Saint, he couldn't go up against one Tier 5 NPC and one Tier 5 legendary monster simultaneously. Not to mention, the enemy's Tier 5 commander was far from ordinary, clad in a complete set of fragmented legendary set equipment and even wielding a legendary greatsword. He was a top-ranking existence even among Tier 5 existences, and definitely not someone current Tier 5 players could contend with. When Fang Shihan saw the ancient bone dragon, her complexion also turned very ugly. She had never imagined that the Outer World NPCs could summon an actual Tier 5 legendary monster. This ancient bone dragon was much stronger than the 9-headed world snake the Outer World players summoned previously. The summoning array the Outer World players had used was something similar to the Divine Beast's Descent magic array. The monster summoned wasn't an actual monster but a magical illusion. So long as one heavily damaged the summoning array, one would dispel the illusion. It was a different story for actual summon monsters. The only way to get rid of a summon monster was by killing either the monster or the monster's summoner. However, there was no specific summoner in a group summoning. Unless one killed all of the summoners involved, the summoned creature would remain, obedient to the summoner's commands. Before the Steel Lion Fortress's players could overcome their despair, the Outer World's Tier 5 commander, Losferit, pointed at the Steel Lion Fortress and ordered, "Attack! Kill all of the natives!" At Losferit's command, the ancient bone dragon, along with the 30-plus advanced flying ships and 6 bronze flying ships, began bombarding the Steel Lion Fortress. The ancient bone dragon used the Tier 5 spell Hell Lotus and showered the Steel Lion Fortress with crimson flames so hot that they incinerated space itself. Meanwhile, the flying ships fired all their cannons, raining hundreds of destructive beams on the fortress. Boom! The resulting explosion was so devastating that it was audible even tens of thousands of yards away. The consequent shockwave ravaged the area within 3,000 yards of the fortress. Upon seeing this attack, the Outer World NPCs charging at the Steel Lion Fortress revealed joyous expressions. If the Steel Lion Fortress received such an attack without its defensive magic array, all of the fortress's inhabitants would disappear without a trace. However, when the smoke enveloping the fortress dissipated, the Outer World NPCs suddenly fell silent. How is this possible? The Outer World's Tier 3 NPCs stared at the sight before them with dumbfounded expressions. In fact, even the people inside the Steel Lion Fortress were stunned by this situation. Their minds boggled. Before anyone realized it, a gigantic magic barrier had formed around the Steel Lion Fortress and blocked all the attacks from the flying ships and the ancient bone dragon. Let alone annihilating the fortress's inhabitants, the flying ships and the ancient bone dragon had even failed to scratch the fortress walls. However, before anyone could snap out of their daze, the barrier enveloping the fortress suddenly disappeared. 6 crystalline spheres the size of a small house then flew toward the Blue Thunder flying ship and hovered around it. That flying ship created that barrier just now? Are you kidding me? Is that really a flying ship? How can it stop a legendary monster's Tier 5 spell? Be it the players or NPCs inside the Steel Lion Fortress, all of them currently had their mouths hanging wide open as they stared at the Blue Thunder flying ship. After all, the flying ship's performance had shattered their notions of flying ships. The Blue Thunder flying ship's defensive capabilities practically rivaled a mobile fortress's. At this time, even Fang Shihan, who knew the specifics of the situation, was rendered speechless. She had no idea that a mysterious iron flying ship could be that strong. Of those present, only Shi Feng found this situation normal. The Grey Thunder flying ship might only be a mysterious iron flying ship, but its technological content exceeded that of the average mysterious iron flying ship. Its usage of mana was particularly exceptional. If not for its inadequate materials and power source, it could easily become a secret silver flying ship. Now that you're done attacking, it's our turn now. Pointing at the Outer World's NPC army, Shi Feng commanded, "Beat them up." Along with Shi Feng's command, the Zero Wing members seated on the Blue Thunder flying ship eagerly revved up the engine's output to maximum. Subsequently, the flying ship's 40 advanced magic elven cannons, 12 floating crystal cannons, and Thunder of Destruction main cannon fired at the enemy flying ships and flying mounts and the ancient bone dragon simultaneously. Boom, boom, boom. For a moment, countless lightning arcs and beams of light filled the battlefield, making it seem as if the heavens were doling out divine retribution. The ancient bone dragon and outerworld NPCs reacted quickly and activated defensive spells to protect themselves. However, apart from the ancient bone dragon's defensive barrier, the defensive barriers conjured for the flying ships and flying mounts all shattered without exception. When the barrage ended, several dozen flying mounts crashed to the ground. The advanced flying ships also suffered severe damage, their mobility plummeting significantly. With how much damage they took from just one bombardment, they would probably fall after another 3 or 4. As for the bronze flying ships, although they didn't take any serious damage, their armor's durability still plummeted by a significant margin. After the Blue Thunder flying ship ended its barrage, everyone on the battlefield turned to stare at it, petrified. Isn't this thing a little too strong? So this is Zero Wing's trump card? The Steel Lion Fortress's players found their minds stagnating as they took in the tattered state of the Outerworld Army's air units. Just a moment ago, they were clearly at an overwhelming disadvantage in air power. However, the Blue Thunder flying ship had instantly turned the tables with its arrival. This situation was simply unbelievable. When Kola looked at the distant Blue Thunder flying ship, his eyes glowed and his mouth watered. He then turned to Shifeng and asked, "Guild leader, when can I buy one?" Compared to flying mounts, traveling across the continent in the Blue Thunder flying ship would be a much more wonderful experience. "You'll get your chance eventually," Shifeng said, chuckling when he saw Kola's excitement. "However, this thing needs 10 people to pilot. It's not something you can pilot alone." When Shifeng finished speaking, the Zero Wing members present were all thrilled. After all, based on Shifeng's words, the guild would eventually sell the Blue Thunder flying ship to its members once the flying ship was available in larger numbers. This meant that all of them had an opportunity to own this steel behemoth. And even if they couldn't ride it alone, they could simply form a team to do so. However, shortly after Shifeng finished speaking, the enemy commander, who had not taken any action thus far, suddenly turned to Shifeng. At this time, though, the contempt in Los Ferret's eyes had disappeared. There was even a faint smile on his face. "You are an exceptional heaven-blessed individual," Los Ferret said as he lifted his greatsword and rested it on his shoulder. Smiling, he asked, "May I know your name?" "Black Flame," Shifeng replied calmly. Although Black Flame wasn't his real ID, he had long since gotten accustomed to using it. Moreover, the outer world knew of only Black Flame and not Yifeng. "Black Flame." Los Ferret, who appeared to be in his 50s, nodded. He then earnestly introduced himself. "I am Los Ferret, the Commander-in-Chief of the God's Domain Crusade Army's 19th Corps, and one of the 17 stars of the Holy Grail. You are qualified to be my enemy." After Los Ferret finished speaking, the strength of his mana domain suddenly increased. Now, even the fortress's magic arrays couldn't nullify it. The instant Los Ferret's mana domain enveloped the Steel Lion Fortress, everyone inside the fortress felt their bodies become significantly heavier. Now, the fortress's Tier 3 combatants even had difficulty lifting their heads. A scorching heat also blanketed their bodies as if they were standing in a burning hell. Even Fire Dance, who had an 8-piece epic set equipment equipped and wielded a legendary weapon, felt immense pressure on her body. She would be fortunate to exhibit even 60% of her usual combat power. And as a result of this suppression, she became even less of an opponent for the enemy's level 180 Tier 5 Vanguard leader in front of her. One of the 17 stars of the Holy Grail? Shifeng grew more cautious after hearing Los Ferret's introduction. Although he had never heard of the 17 stars of the Holy Grail, God's Domain had an official ranking list known as the 10 Saints, which represented the 10 strongest combatants recognized by the War God's Temple. Every one of these 10 saints was rumored to have demigod-level combat power. Shifeng guessed that Los Ferret was probably on par with the 10 saints. Based on his observation of Los Ferret's mana domain, he could tell that the other party had already mastered a world law. The only thing holding the NPC back from reaching Tier 6 was his concentration. Nevertheless, with a legendary weapon in hand, Los Ferret should be a powerhouse even among demigods. However, although Los Ferret possessed a powerful mana domain, it had no effect on Shifeng whatsoever. Immediately, Shifeng unleashed his own mana domain, canceling out Los Ferret's and even suppressing the NPC slightly. Let's fight. Let me see how powerful you heaven-blessed individuals are. Los Ferret said, his body suddenly splitting into more than 100 doppelgangers that charged at Shi Feng from different directions. Tier 5 skill, Shadowlight Kill. After activating Shadow Kill, Los Ferret spun and swung his greatsword. Tier 5 skill, Great Holy Cross. Tier 5 skill, Draconic Stars. Immediately, Los Ferret's doppelgangers transformed into gigantic crosses that pierced through space. Each of these crosses then split and transformed into several dozen serpentine dragons. Several thousand serpentine dragons flew toward Shi Feng, their large numbers making it impossible to dodge or block them all. He combined 3 Tier 5 skills. Fire Dance and the others were startled when they saw Los Ferret's attack. For true expert players, combining the effects of skills was a must-learn technique. However, the higher the tier of the skills, the more difficult combining them would be. Currently, even domain realm experts like Fire Dance and Yin Tianxing could just barely combine 2 Tier 4 skills. Yet, Los Ferret had combined 3 Tier 5 skills. Los Ferret's combat standard was simply unprecedented. Every addition to a skill combination would double the power of the combined attack. Los Ferret's combined Tier 5 skills could exhibit quadruple the power of a standard Tier 5 skill. Moreover, Los Ferret was also wielding a legendary weapon. These two factors would probably deter even a Tier 5 dragon from receiving Los Ferret's attack. Amazing! When Shi Feng perceived the several thousand serpentine dragons flying toward him, he was awed. If this were before his fight with the scholar, he would definitely rank Los Ferret number 1 when it came to the usage of skills out of all the NPCs he knew. However, while Los Ferret's attack might seem unstoppable in the eyes of other players, that wasn't the case for Shi Feng. After Shi Feng's concentration reached the Tier 5 peak standard, his brain's processing speed had undergone another qualitative transformation. Previously, he could only increase his brain's processing speed twofold. Now, he could increase it fourfold. This was also the part that made mental strength masters powerful. Nonetheless, he still didn't dare take the approaching serpentine dragons lightly. Immediately, he unsheathed the Light of Two Worlds and executed a horizontal slash. Spatial slash. Swords transmigration. Shi Feng had gotten promoted to Tier 5 only recently, so he had hardly any Tier 5 skills that could counter Los Ferret's attack. His only option to offset this shortcoming was to rely on his weapons, equipment, and techniques. The Light of Two Worlds was one of the 10 great legendary weapons. It was among the strongest legendary weapons in existence, not something ordinary legendary weapons could hope to match. The next moment, with Shi Feng as the center, a golden lotus bloomed on the battlefield, the petals of the lotus nullifying the energy making up the serpentine dragons. In the blink of an eye, the several thousand serpentine dragons vanished from the battlefield. Upon seeing that his first attack had failed, Los Ferret immediately took a different approach and transformed into a streak of light shooting toward Shi Feng. Tier 5 skill, Shadowlight Steps. Shadowlight Steps not only provided Los Ferret with a brief moment of invulnerability, but also increased his attack speed and destructive power. After appearing in front of Shi Feng and swinging his greatsword down at him, Los Ferret also let out a roar. Tier 5 skill, Voice of the Soul. When activated, Voice of the Soul would stun all enemies within a radius of several hundred yards, causing their reaction speed to plummet. The skill also dealt a heavy blow to their souls. However, Los Ferret still wasn't done. Even after activating Voice of the Soul, he also activated World Strike, an additional skill that came with his greatsword. It allowed him to launch an attack at the Tier 6 peak standard and had a 1-hour cooldown. Even a Tier 6 existence would have to be wary of the combination of these three skills, what more a Tier 5 player like Shi Feng. However, as Los Ferret took action, Shi Feng activated Divine Steps and instantly swapped positions with the doppelganger located over 1,000 yards away from him, dodging the NPC's Voice of the Soul. Unfortunately, as all 36 of his doppelgangers were still within range of Los Ferret's World Strike, Shi Feng had no choice but to counter with World Breaker. Boom! An explosion took place in midair, and everyone on the battlefield gaped in shock when they saw the aftermath of the clash between Shi Feng and Los Ferret. The sky above the Steel Lion Fortress had turned into a dark, empty void. Some of the advanced and bronze flying ships, unfortunate enough to be caught within this void, even turned to dust. That is a powerful sword you have there. Not only did it break my world strike, but it even injured me, Los Ferret exclaimed as he looked at the light of two worlds in Shifeng's hand. The greatsword he wielded was top tier even among legendary weapons. Yet, even after he activated his greatsword's strongest skill, his attack still lost to Shifeng's. This was simply unbelievable. Although he lost less than 10% of his HP from the exchange, this was still an astonishing outcome. After all, ever since he equipped the Holy Star set, he had never received so much damage from a single attack until now. Meanwhile, the players inside the fortress were dumbfounded by the outcome of the clash between Shifeng and Los Ferret. In their opinion, this was no longer a battle between humans but a battle between gods. When Los Ferret executed his earlier attack, most of them already thought they would die. Fortunately, Shifeng had shattered the attack. Otherwise, the Steel Lion Fortress would probably have disappeared from the Twin Towers Kingdom. You overpraise me. When Shifeng saw that Los Ferret had received some damage, he immediately followed up on his small victory with Golden Soul, elevating his soul to the Tier 6 standard. He then swapped positions with the doppelganger closest to Los Ferret, and swung the light of two worlds at the NPC. Holy Annihilation. Now that Shifeng's concentration was elevated to Tier 6 and he understood the true way to utilize the Law of Destruction, he executed Holy Annihilation with much greater proficiency than before. However, when executing this attack, Shifeng didn't use the Heavenly Blue Saint's Destruction Magic Array. Instead, he tried using his own mana to break the operations of the ambient mana. Originally, when Shifeng's concentration was only at the Tier 5 peak standard, accomplishing this feat would have been incredibly difficult. However, after activating Golden Soul, his control over and perception of mana had undergone a qualitative transformation. This, in turn, reduced the difficulty of the challenge significantly, turning the impossible possible. The next moment, the space Shifeng's sword passed through transformed into an empty void, the power of his attack having reached the Tier 6 intermediate standard already. A law technique? Los Ferret was startled when he saw the destroyed space. As someone who had already mastered a world law, integrating the world law into his swordsmanship was something he had always dreamed of. However, accomplishing this feat was simply too difficult, which was why even demigods could normally only rely on mana techniques as a guide to make use of world laws. However, Shifeng currently wasn't relying on any magic arrays as a guide. He was making use of a world law purely with his own strength. The power one could exhibit this way was much greater than what one could exhibit by relying on a mana technique. This was because a mana technique was a fixed sword technique. If one had to rely on mana techniques to make use of world laws, one could use only these specific mana techniques. However, if one could freely make use of a world law, then regardless of what technique one used, all of one's techniques would carry the power of the world law. The difference in flexibility between the two was like heaven and earth. Of course, the law technique Shifeng currently displayed was extremely crude, and he could use only a small portion of the Law of Destruction's power. Nonetheless, Los Ferret dared not act recklessly against Shifeng's attack. He immediately swung his greatsword. Mana technique Burning Sea. Boom! When the two swords collided, a vast void and a sea of flames appeared in the sky once more. The terrifying shockwave the collision generated even obliterated the Tier 3 combatants nearby, while those standing farther away got sent flying. Subsequently, the clangor of swords clashing rang out in the sky time after time. Apart from some Tier 4 individuals with incredibly high basic attributes, everyone else dared not stay anywhere near Shifeng and Los Ferret's battle. The clash between Shifeng and Los Ferret continued for more than a minute, the deafening explosions numbing everyone's mind. However, the more Shifeng fought, the fiercer his attacks became. Despite Los Ferret doing his best to avoid a head-on clash, Shifeng took the initiative to do the exact opposite. Shifeng was relying on this intense life-and-death battle to familiarize himself with the process of breaking the operations of mana. As more time passed, Los Ferret gradually fell into a disadvantage, his HP decreasing continuously. Only after 2 minutes had gone by and the effect of Shifeng's Golden Soul disappeared did Los Ferret regain the upper hand. Nevertheless, Los Ferret still couldn't put an end to the battle. This was because even after losing the ability to use his law technique, Shifeng could still rely on Holy Annihilation to use the Law of Destruction. Hence, he had no problem clashing with Los Ferret. Moreover, both of them had healers supporting them. Unless one of them made a fatal mistake, neither was unlikely to die. In the meantime, the Blue Thunder flying ship was deeply entangled with the ancient bone dragon. However, as the Blue Thunder flying ship had a lot of cannons, it managed to pin down the ancient bone dragon while shooting down the enemy's flying ships and flying mounts one after another. When Los Ferret saw another bronze flying ship crash to the ground, his eyes twitched involuntarily. At this point, his army had already lost 4 bronze flying ships and over 20 advanced flying ships. The loss of flying mounts was even worse. These things were practically mobile targets in front of the Blue Thunder flying ship. And worse, the Steel Lion Fortress's defensive barrier was gradually taking shape once more. Evidently, the fortress's defensive magic array had already been fully reactivated. After the Tier 5 Vanguard leader repelled Fire Dance and saw that the fortress's defensive barrier was reforming, he looked toward Los Ferret and said, "Lord Ferret, we cannot continue like this. Once the defensive barrier is up again, we'll be very passive." At the Vanguard leader's words, Los Ferret gritted his teeth and commanded, "Everyone retreat." Obedient to Los Ferret's command, the Outer Worlds NPC army, which only had around 2 million NPCs remaining, began an orderly retreat from the Steel Lion Fortress. Los Ferret, the Vanguard leader, and the ancient bone dragon served as the rearguard, preventing Sherfong and the Blue Thunder flying ship from giving chase. After the Outer World NPCs opened a teleportation portal and left the battlefield, Los Ferret and the Vanguard leader promptly retreated into the portal as well, leaving the ancient bone dragon behind. The summoning array used to summon the ancient bone dragon could keep it under control for only a certain period. After this period was over, the ancient bone dragon would regain its freedom. Hence, they might as well leave it behind and have it pin down Sherfong and the others. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Once the Outer Worlds NPC army retreated, Sherfong and the others spent around 20 minutes killing the ancient bone dragon. When the level 180 legendary monster died, Fire Dance and the others leveled up once. The monster's death also awarded Zero Wing with 1 fragmented legendary weapon, over a dozen level 180 epic weapons and equipment, and several dozen legendary materials. Upon seeing the loot, the Tier 3 and Tier 4 players belonging to other guilds couldn't help growing envious. Afterward, Sherfong immediately rode the Blue Thunder flying ship to the Twin Towers Kingdom's 2 other battlefronts. The Redthorn Fortresses and Thunder Gorge City situations were much better than the Steel Lion Fortresses. This was especially true for Thunder Gorge City. Because Aqua Rose was now a Tier 5 Grand Wizard, the Outer World NPC army that attacked Thunder Gorge City received a resounding defeat, similar to the army that attacked the Steel Lion Fortress. As for the Redthorn Fortress, although the defenders here suffered somewhat terrible losses, they still managed to repulse the enemy. With the successful defense of these 3 strongholds, the Twin Towers Kingdom's players exploded with joy. Meanwhile, news of this astonishing outcome immediately spread across the entire continent, causing a sensation in God's domain. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.